We got a kid, too. Ours. She carried it. DNA splice? She nodded. That's expensive, he said. You know it. Wouldn't be here if we didn't need to pay it off. But she's beautiful. Your woman? Our kid. Chapter 12. Café Blanc. As she walked from the Louvre, she seemed to sense some articulated structure shifting to accommodate her course through the city. The waiter would be merely a part of the thing, one limb, a delicate probe or palp. The whole would be larger, much larger. How could she have imagined that it would be possible to live, to move in the unnatural field of Vierek's wealth without suffering distortion? Vierek had taken her up in all her misery and had rotated her through the monstrous, invisible stresses of his money. And she had been changed. Of course, she thought, of course. It moves around me constantly, watchful and invisible. The vast and subtle mechanism of Herr Vierek's surveillance. Eventually, she found herself on the pavement below the terrace of the Blanc. It seemed as good a place as any.
4, 3,
A month before,
2,
she would have avoided
1.
it.
Engage.
She'd spent too many evenings with Alan there. Now, feeling that she had been freed, she decided to begin the process of rediscovering her own Paris by choosing a table at the Blanc. She took one near a side screen. She asked a waiter for a cognac and
Fuel
shivered,
scooping.
watching the Paris traffic flow past. Perpetual river of steel and glass, while all around her at other tables, strangers ate and smiled, drank and argued,
Fuel
said
scoop
bitter
disengaged.
goodbyes, or swore private fealties to an afternoon's feeling.
Frameshift drive charging.
But, she smiled, she was a part of it all. Something in her was waking from a long and stifled sleep, brought back into the light in the instant she'd fully opened her eyes to
engage.
Alan's viciousness
4,
and her
3,
own desperate
2,
need to continue
1.
loving him.
Engage.
But that need was fading, even as she sat here. The shabbiness of his lies somehow had broken the chains of her depression. She could see no logic to it because she had known in some part of herself, and long before the business with Nas, exactly what it was that Alan did in the world. And that had made no difference to her love. In the face of this new feeling, however, she would forego logic.
Fuel scooping.
It was enough to be here, alive, at a table in the Blanc, and to imagine all around her the
Fuel
intricate
scooping
machine
complete.
that she now knew Vierek had deployed. Ironies, she thought, seeing
Warning,
the young waiter from
temperature
Napoleon
critical.
Court step up onto the terrace. He wore the dark trousers he had worked in, but the apron had been replaced with a blue windbreaker. Dark hair fell across his forehead in a smooth wing.
Frameshift drive
Came
charging.
toward her, smiling, confident, knowing that she wouldn't run. There was something in her then that wanted very badly to run, but she knew that she wouldn't. Irony, she told
4,
herself,
3, 2.
as I
1.
luxuriate in the
Engage.
discovery that I am no special sponge for sorrow, but merely another fallible animal in the stone maze of a city. I come simultaneously to see that I am the focus of some vast device fueled by an obscure desire. My name is Buck,
Fuel scooping.
he said, pulling out the white-painted iron chair opposite her own. You were the child,
Fuel scooping complete.
the boy in the park. A long time ago, yes. He sat. Thanyor has preserved the image of my
Frameshift
childhood.
drive charging.
I have been thinking about your Fenjar. She didn't look at him, but at the passing cars, cooling her eyes in the flow of traffic, the colors of polycarbon and painted steel.
4, 3,
A man
2,
like Virak is
1.
incapable
Engage.
of divesting himself of his wealth. His money has a life of its own, perhaps a will of its own. He implied as much when we met. You are a philosopher. I'm a tool, Paco. I'm the most recent tip for a very old machine
Fuel
in the
scooping.
hands of a very old man who wishes to penetrate something and has so far failed to do so. Your employer fumbles through 1,000 tools and
Fuel
somehow
scooping
chooses me.
complete.
You are a poet as well. She laughed, taking her eyes from the traffic. He was grinning, his mouth bracketed in deep vertical grooves. While I walked here, I imagined a structure,
Frameshift drive charging.
a machine so large that I am incapable of seeing it. A machine that surrounds me, anticipating my every step.
4, 3,
And you are an
2,
egotist as well.
1. Engage.
Am I? Perhaps not. Certainly you are observed. We watch, and it is well that we do. Your friend in the brasserie, we watch him as well. Unfortunately, we've been unable to determine where he obtained the hologram he showed you. Very likely,
Fuel
he already
scooping.
had it when he began to phone your friend's number. Someone got to him, do you understand? Someone has put him in your way.
Fuel scoop disengaged.
Don't you think that this is most intriguing?
Frameshift
Doesn't
drive
it
charging.
pique the philosopher in you? Yes, I suppose it does. I took the advice you gave me in the brasserie and agreed to his price. Then he will double it.
4,
Paco smiled.
3, 2, 1.
Which is of no
Engage.
importance to me, as you pointed out. He has agreed to contact me tomorrow. I assume that you can arrange the delivery of money? He asked for cash. Cash? He rolled his eyes. How risque. But yes, I can. And I know the details as well. We were monitoring the conversation. Not difficult, as he was helpful enough to broadcast it himself from a bead microphone. We were anxious to learn who that broadcast was intended for, but we doubt he knows that himself. It was unlike him,
Frameshift drive
she said,
charging.
frowning, to excuse himself to break off that way before he had made his demands. He fancies he has a flair for the dramatic moment. He had no choice.
4,
Paco
3,
said.
2, 1.
We engineered
Engage.
what he took to be a failure of the bead's power source. It required a trip to the Om then. He said very nasty things about you, alone in the cubicle. She gestured to her empty glass as a waiter passed. I still find it difficult to see my part in this. My value.
Fuel
To
scooping.
Virak, I mean. Don't ask me. You are the philosopher here. I merely execute Señor's orders to the best of my ability. Would you like a brandy, Paco? Or perhaps some coffee?
Fuel scoop
The
disengaged.
French, he said with great conviction.
Frameshift drive
nothing
charging.
about coffee. Chapter 13. With both hands. Maybe you can run
4,
that one by me
3,
again?
2,
Bobby said,
1.
around a
Engage.
mouthful of rice and eggs. I thought you already said it's not a religion. Beauvoir removed his eyeglass frames and sighted down one of the earpieces. That wasn't what I said. I said, you didn't have to worry about it is all, whether it's a
Fuel
religion or not.
scooping.
It's just a structure. Let's you and me discuss some things that are happening, otherwise we might not have words for it. Concepts. But you talk like these whatchamacallem
Fuel
lows
scooping
are
complete.
low up.
Warning. Temperature
Beauvoir
critical.
corrected, tossing his glasses down on the table. He sighed, dug one of the Chinese cigarettes from Two-A-Day's pack, and lit it with the pewter skull. Plural's same as the singular. He inhaled deeply, blew out twin streams of
Frameshift
smoke
drive
through arched
charging.
nostrils. You think religion. What are you thinking about exactly? Well, my mother's sister, she's a Scientologist, real Orthodox, you know.
4, 3,
And
2,
there's this woman
1.
across the hall,
Engage.
she's Catholic. My old lady, he paused, the food gone tasteless in his mouth. She'd put these holograms up in my room sometimes, Jesus or Hubbard or some shit. I guess I think about that. Vodou isn't like that. Beauvoir said. It isn't concerned with notions of
Fuel
salvation and
scooping.
transcendence. What it's about is getting things done. You follow me? In our system, there are many
Fuel scooping
gods,
complete.
spirits, part of one big family with all the virtues, all the vices.
Warning.
There's
Frameshift
a
drive
ritual
operating
tradition,
beyond
communal
safety limits.
manifestation. understand?
Frameshift drive charging.
Vodou says there's God, sure, Grand Met, but he's big, too big, and too far away to worry himself if your ass is poor or you can't get laid. Come on, man, you know how this works. It's street religion, came out of a dirt poor
4,
place a million years
3,
ago.
2,
Vodou's
1.
like the street.
Engage.
Some dust that chops out your sister, you don't go camp on the Yakuza's doorstep, do you? No way. You go to somebody, though, who can get the thing done right. Bobby nodded, chewing thoughtfully. Another Durham and 2 glasses of red wine had helped a lot. And the big man had taken Two-A-Day for a walk through the trees and the fluorescent
Fuel scooping.
jackstraws, leaving Bobby with Beauvoir. Then Jackie had shown up all cheerful, with a big bowl of this eggs and rice stuff,
Fuel scooping
which wasn't bad at all.
complete.
And as she'd put it down on the table in front of him, she'd pressed one of her tits against his shoulder. So, Beauvoir said, we are concerned with getting things done. If you want, we're concerned with systems.
Frameshift
so are
drive
you.
charging.
Or at least you want to be. Or else you wouldn't be a cowboy, and you wouldn't have a handle, right? He dunked what was left of the cigarette in a finger-printed glass half full of red
4,
wine.
3,
Looks
2,
like Two-A-Day was about to
1.
get down to
Engage.
serious partying about the time the shit hit the fan. What shit's that? Bobby asked, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. You, Beauvoir said, frowning. Not that any of it is your fault. As much as Two-A-Day wants to make out that's the case. He does? He seems pretty tense now,
Fuel
real
scooping.
bitchy too. Exactly. You got it. Tense. Scared shitless is more like it.
Fuel scooping complete.
So, how come? Well, you see, things aren't exactly what they seem with Two-A-Day. I mean, yeah, he actually
Warning.
does the kind of
Temperature
shit you've
critical.
known him to. Hustles hot software to the Caspers, pardon me. He grinned. Down in Barrytown. But his main shot, I mean, the man's real ambitions, you understand, lie elsewhere. Beauvoir
Frameshift
picked up a
drive
wilted
charging.
canapé, regarded it with evident suspicion, and flicked it over the table into the trees. His thing, you understand, is dicking around for a couple of big-time sprawl ungans.
4,
Bobby nodded blankly.
3, 2, 1. Engage.
Dudes who serve with both hands. You lost me there. We're talking the professional priesthood here. You want to call it that. Otherwise, just imagine a couple of major dudes, console cowboys among other things, who make it their business to get things done
Fuel
for people.
scooping.
To serve with both hands is an expression we have, sort of meaning
Fuel scoop
they work
disengaged.
both ends. White and black, got me? Bobby swallowed, then
Frameshift
his
drive
head.
charging.
sorcerers. Beauvoir said. Never mind. Bad dudes. Big money, that's all you need to know. 2 a day, he acts like an upline Joe boy for these people.
2, 1.
Sometimes he
Engage.
finds something they might be interested in. He downloads it on them, collects a few favors later. Maybe he collects a dozen too many favors, they download something on him. Not quite the same proposition, you follow me? Say they get something they think has potential, but it scares them. These characters tend to a certain conservatism, you see. No? Well, you'll learn. Bobby nodded. The kind of software someone like you would run from 2 a day, that's nothing. I mean, it'll work, but it's nothing anybody heavy would ever bother with. You've seen a lot of cowboy kinos, right? Well, the stuff they make up for those things isn't much compared with the kind of shit a real heavy operator can front.
Frameshift
Particularly
drive charging.
when it comes to icebreakers. Heavy icebreakers are kind of funny to deal in, even for the big boys. You know why? Because ice. All the
4,
really hard
3,
stuff.
2.
The walls
1.
around every
Engage.
major store of data in the Matrix is always the produce of an AI, an artificial intelligence. Nothing else is fast enough to weave good ice and constantly alter and upgrade it. So, when a really powerful icebreaker shows up on the black market,
Fuel scooping.
there are already a couple of very dicey factors in play.
Heat
Like
sink
the stars.
deployed.
Where did the product come from?
Fuel scooping complete.
9 times out of 10, it came from an AI. And AIs are constantly screened, mainly by the Turing people, to make sure they don't get too smart.
Frameshift
So
drive
maybe
charging.
you'll get the Turing machine after your ass. Because maybe an AI somewhere wants to augment its private cash flow. Some AIs have citizenship, right? Another thing you have to watch out for.
4,
Maybe it's a
3,
military icebreaker.
2, 1.
That's bad
Engage.
heat too. Or maybe it's taking a walk out of some Zaibatsu's industrial espionage arm, and you don't want that either. You taking this shit in, Bobby? Bobby nodded. He felt like he'd been waiting all his life to hear Beauvoir explain the workings of a world whose existence he'd only guessed at before. Still, an icebreaker that'll really cut is worth mega. I mean, beaucoup. So maybe you're Mr. Big in the market. Someone offers you this thing, and you don't want to just tell him to take a walk, so you buy it. You buy it real quiet, but you don't slot it. No.
Frameshift drive charging.
What do you do with it? You take it home, have your tech fix it up so it looks real average, like you have it set up in a format like this. And he tapped a stack of software in front of him, and you
4,
take it to your
3,
Joe boy,
2,
who owes you some
1.
favors as usual.
Engage.
Wait a sec, Bobby said. I don't think I like. Good. That means you're getting smart. Or anyway, smarter. Because that's what they did. They brought it out here to your friendly wayman, Mr. Tuaday, and they told him their problem. Ace, they say, we want to check this shit out, test drive it, but no way we gonna do it ourselves. It's down to you, boy. So, in the way of things, what's Tuaday gonna do with it? Is he gonna slot it? No way at all.
Fuel scoop
He just does the
disengaged.
same damn thing the big boys did to him, except he isn't even gonna bother telling the guy he's going to do it to. What he does, he picks a base out in the
Frameshift
Midwest
drive
that's full of
charging.
tax dodge programs and yen laundry flowcharts for some whorehouse in Kansas City. And everybody who didn't just fall off a tree knows that the motherfucker is eyeball deep in ice. Black ice.
3, 2,
Totally
1.
lethal feedback
Engage.
programs. There isn't a cowboy in the sprawl or out who'd mess with that base. First, because it's dripping with defenses. Second, because the stuff inside isn't worth anything to anybody but the IRS, and they're probably already on the owner's take. Hey, Bobby said, let me get this straight. I'm giving it to you straight, white boy. He picked out that base. Then he ran down his list of hot doggers, ambitious punks from over in Barrytown, Wilsons dumb enough to run a program they'd never seen before against a base that some joker like Two-A-Day fingered for them and told them was an easy make. And who's he pick? He picked somebody new to the game, Natch. Somebody who doesn't even know where he lives. Doesn't even have his number.
3,
And he says, here,
2,
my man,
1.
you take this home and make yourself some money. You get anything good, I'll fence it for you. Beauvoir's eyes were wide. He wasn't smiling. Sound like anybody you know, man? Or maybe you try not to hang out with losers. You mean he knew I was
Fuel scooping.
going to get killed if I plugged into that base? No, Bobby. But he knew it was a possibility if the package didn't work. What he mainly wanted was to watch you
Fuel
try,
scoop disengaged.
which he didn't bother to do himself.
Frameshift
Just put a
drive
couple of
charging.
cowboys on it. It could have gone a couple different ways. Say if that icebreaker had done its number on the black ice. You'd have gotten in, found a bunch of figures that meant dick to you.
4,
You'd have gotten back out,
3, 2,
maybe without
1.
leaving any trace of
Engage.
us. Well, you'd have come back to Leon's and told Two-A-Day that he fingered the wrong data. Oh, he'd have been real apologetic for sure. And you'd have gotten a new target and a new icebreaker. And he'd have taken the first one back to the sprawl and said it looked okay.
System
Meanwhile,
scan complete.
he'd have an eye cocked in your direction, just to monitor your health. Make sure nobody came looking for the icebreaker they might have heard you used. Another way it might have gone, the way it nearly did go. Something could have been funny with the icebreaker.
Frameshift drive charging.
The ice could have fried you dead. And one of those cowboys would have had to break into your mama's place and get that software back before anybody found your body. I don't know, Beauvoir, that's
4,
pretty fucking hard
3,
to hard my
2,
ass. Life
1.
is hard. I mean, we're
Engage.
talking biz, you know? Beauvoir regarded him with some severity. The plastic frames far down his slender nose. He was lighter than either Two-A-Day or the big man, the color of coffee with only a little whitener. His forehead high and smooth beneath close-cropped black frizz.
Fuel scooping.
He looked skinny under his gray sharkskin robe, and Bobby didn't really find him threatening at all. But our problem, the reason we're here, the reason you're here, is to figure out what did happen.
Fuel scoop
And that's something
disengaged.
else. But you mean he set me up? Two-A-Day set me up so I'd get my ass killed? Bobby was still in the St. Mary's maternity wheelchair, although he no longer felt like he needed it. And he's in deep shit with these guys, these heavies from the sprawl?
4, 3,
You got
2,
it now.
1. Engage.
And that's why he's acting that way. Like he doesn't give a shit. Or maybe hates my guts, right? And he's real scared. Beauvoir nodded. And Bobby said, suddenly seeing what Two-A-Day was really pissed about and why he was scared. It's because I got my
Fuel
ass
scooping.
jumped down by Big Playground, and those low fucks ripped me from my deck. And their software, it was still in my deck. He leaned forward, excited at having put it together. And these guys,
Fuel
it's like
scooping complete.
they'll kill him or something unless he gets it back for them, right? I can tell you watch a lot of Kino, Beauvoir said. But that's about the size of it, definitely. Right, Bobby said, settling
Frameshift
back in the
drive
wheelchair and
charging.
putting his bare feet up on the edge of the table. Well, Beauvoir, Who are these guys? What you call them? Hoongans? Sorcerers, you said.
4.
What the fuck's that
3,
supposed to mean?
2, 1.
Well, Bobby.
Engage.
Beauvoir said. I'm one. And the big fella, you can call him Lucas. He's the other. You've probably seen one of these before, Beauvoir said, as the man he called Lucas
System
put the
scan
projection tank
complete.
down on the table, having methodically cleared a space for it. In school, Bobby said. You go to school, man? Two-a-day snapped. Why the fuck didn't you stay there? He'd been chain-smoking since he came back with Lucas, and seemed in worse shape than he'd been in before. Shut up, Two-a-day, Beauvoir said. Little education might do you some good. They used one to teach us our way around in the Matrix, how to access stuff from the print library like that. Well then, Lucas said, straightening up and brushing non-existent dust from his big pink palms. Did you ever use it for
4,
that?
3,
To access
2,
print books?
1. Engage.
He'd removed his immaculate black suit coat. His spotless white shirt was traversed by a pair of slender maroon suspenders. And he'd loosened the knot of his plain black tie. I don't read too well, Bobby said. I mean, I can, but it's work. But yeah, I did. I looked at some real old books in the Matrix and stuff. I thought you had, Lucas said, jacking some kind of small deck into the console that formed the base of the tank. Count 0. Count 0
Fuel scoop
interrupt.
disengaged.
Old programmer talk. He passed the deck to Beauvoir, who began to tap commands into it. Complex geometric forms began to click into place in the tank, aligned with the nearly invisible planes of a three-dimensional grid. Beauvoir was sketching in the cyberspace coordinates for Barrytown, Bobby saw. We'll call you this Blue Pyramid, Bobby. There you are. A blue pyramid began to pulse softly at the very center of the tank. Now we'll show you what two-a-days cowboys saw, the ones who are watching you. From now on, you're seeing a recording. An interrupted line of blue light extruded from the pyramid, following a grid line. Bobby watched. Seeing himself alone in his mother's living room, the Ono Sendai on his lap, the curtains drawn, his fingers moving across the deck. Icebreaker on its way, Beauvoir said. The line of blue dots reached the wall of the tank.
Frameshift
Beauvoir
drive
tapped the
charging.
deck and the coordinates changed. A new set of geometrics replaced the first arrangement. Bobby recognized the cluster of orange rectangles centered in the grid. That's it, he said.
4, 3.
The blue
2,
line progressed from the
1.
edge of the tank,
Engage.
headed for the orange base. Faint planes of ghost orange flickered around the rectangles, shifting and strobing as the line grew closer. You can see something's wrong right there, Lucas said. That's their ice. And it was already hip to you.
Fuel scooping.
Rumbled you before you even got a lock. As the line of blue dots touched the shifting orange plane, it was surrounded by a translucent
scoop
orange
disengaged.
tube of slightly greater diameter. The tube began to lengthen, traveling back along the line until it reached the wall of the tank.
Frameshift drive charging.
Wow, Beauvoir said. Back home in Barrytown. He tapped the deck again, and now Bobby's blue pyramid was in the center. Bobby watched as the orange tube
4,
emerged from the
3,
wall of the projection
2,
tank,
1.
still following the blue
Engage.
line, and smoothly approached the pyramid. Now at this point, you are due to start doing some serious dying, cowboy. The tube reached the pyramid. Triangular orange planes snapped up, walling it in. Beauvoir froze the
Fuel
projection.
scooping.
Now, Lucas said.
when Two-A-Days hired help, who are all in all a pair of tough and experienced console jockeys, when they
Fuel
saw what
scooping
you were about
complete.
to see, my man, they decided that their deck was due for that big overhaul in the sky.
Frameshift
Being
drive
pros,
charging.
they had a backup deck. When they brought it online, they saw the same thing. It was at that point that they decided to phone their employer, Mr. Two-A-Day,
4,
who,
3,
as we can see
2,
from this mess,
1. Engage.
was about to throw himself a party.
Man, Two-A-Day said, his voice tight with hysteria. I told you. I had some clients up here needing entertaining. I paid those boys to watch. They were watching, and they phoned me. I phoned you. What the hell you want anyway?
Our property, Beauvoir said softly. Now watch this real close. This motherfucker is what we call an anomalous phenomenon, no shit. He tapped the deck again, starting the recording. Liquid flowers of
Fuel
milky
scooping.
white
Fuel
blossomed
scoop
from the floor of the
disengaged.
tank. Bobby, craning forward, saw that they seemed to consist of thousands of tiny spheres or bubbles, and then they aligned perfectly with the cubical grid and coalesced, forming a top-heavy, asymmetrical structure, a thing like a rectilinear mushroom. The surfaces, facets were white, perfectly blank. The image in the tank was no longer than Bobby's open hand, but to anyone jacked into a deck, it would have been enormous. The thing unfolded a pair of horns. These lengthened, curved, became pincers that arced out to grasp the pyramid. He saw the tip sink smoothly through the flickering orange plains of the enemy ice. She said, "What are you doing?" He heard himself say. Then she asked me why they were doing that, doing it to me, killing me. Ah, Beauvoir said quietly. Now we are getting somewhere. He didn't know where they were going, but he was glad to be out of that chair. Beauvoir ducked to avoid a slanting grow light that dangled from twin lengths of curly cord. Bobby followed, almost slipping in a green-filmed puddle of water. Away from Two-A-Day's couch clearing, the air seemed thicker. There was a greenhouse smell of damp and growing things. So that's how it was, Beauvoir said. Two-A-Day sent some friends round to Covina concourse courts, but you were gone. Your deck was gone too. Well, Bobby said, I don't see it's exactly his fault then. I mean, if I hadn't split for Leon's, and I was looking for Two-A-Day, even looking to try to get up here, then he'd have found me, right? Beauvoir paused to admire a leafy stand of flowering hemp, extending a thin brown forefinger to lightly brush the pale, colorless flowers. True, he said, but this is a business matter. He should have detailed someone to watch your place for the duration of the run, to ensure that neither you nor the software took any unscheduled walks. Well, he sent Rhea and Jackie over to Leon's because I saw him there. Bobby reached into the neck of his black pajamas and scratched at the sealed wound that crossed his chest and stomach. Then he remembered the centipede thing Pa had used as a suture and quickly withdrew his hand. It itched. A straight line of itch. But he didn't want to touch it. No, Jackie and Rhea are ours. Jackie is a Mambo, a priestess, the horse of Danbala. Beauvoir continued on his way, picking out what Bobby presumed was some existing track or path through the jumbled forest of hydroponics, although it seemed to progress in no particular direction.
Some of the larger shrubs were rooted in bulbous green plastic trash bags filled with dark humus. Many of these had burst, and pale roots sought fresh nourishment in the shadows between the grow lights, where time and the gradual fall of leaves conspired to produce a thin compost. Bobby wore a pair of black nylon thongs Jackie had found for him, but there was already damp earth between his toes. A horse? He asked Beauvoir, dodging past a prickly-looking thing that suggested an inside-out palm tree. Danbala rides her. Danbala Wedu, the snake. Other times, she is the horse of Aida Wedu, his wife. Bobby decided not to pursue it. He tried to change the subject. How come Tuade's got such a mother-huge place? What are all these trees and things for? He knew that Jackie and Rhea had wheeled him through a doorway in the St. Mary's chair, but he hadn't seen a wall since. He also knew that the arcology covered X number of hectares, so that it was possible that Tuade's place was very large indeed. But it hardly seemed likely that a wereman, even a very sharp one, could afford this much space. Nobody could afford this much space. And why would anybody want to live in a leaky hydroponic forest? The last derm was wearing off, and his back and chest were beginning to burn and ache. Ficus trees, mapu trees. This whole level of the projects is a Lusan, holy place. Beauvoir tapped Bobby on the shoulder and pointed out twisted, bicolored strings dangling from the limbs of a nearby tree. The trees are consecrated to different Loa. That one is for Ugu. Ugu Ferre, god of war. There's a lot of other things grown up here. Herbs the leaf doctors need, and some just for fun. But this isn't Tuade's place. This is communal. You mean the whole project's into this? All like voodoo and stuff? It was worse than Marcia's darkest fantasies. No, man. And Beauvoir laughed. There's a mosque up top, and a couple of 10,000 Holy Roller Baptists scattered around. Some church aside. All the usual stuff, still. He grinned. We are the ones with the tradition of getting shit done. But how this got started, this level, that goes way back. The people who designed these places, maybe 80, 100 years ago, they had the idea they'd make them as self-sufficient as possible. Make them grow food. Make them heat themselves, generate power, whatever. Now this one, you drill far enough down, is sitting on top of a lot of geothermal water. It's real hot down there, but not hot enough to run an engine, so it wasn't going to give them any power. They made a stab at power up on the roof with about 100 Darius rotors, what they call egg beaters. Had themselves a wind farm, see? Today they get most of their watts off the fishing authority, like anybody else. But that geothermal water, they pump that up to a heat exchanger. It's too salty to drink, so in the exchanger it just heats up your standard Jersey tap water, which a lot of people figure isn't worth drinking anyway. Finally, they were approaching a wall of some kind. Bobby looked back. Shallow pools on the muddy concrete floor caught and reflected the limbs of the dwarf trees, the bare pale roots straggling down into makeshift tanks of hydroponic fluid. Then they pump that into shrimp tanks and grow a lot of shrimp. Shrimp grow real fast in warm water. Then they pump it through pipes in the concrete up here to keep this place warm. That's what this level was for. To grow ponic amaranth, lettuce, things like that. Then they pump it out into the catfish tanks, and algae eat the shrimp shit. Catfish eat the algae, and it all goes around again. Or anyway, that was the idea. Chances are they didn't figure anybody'd go up on the roof and kick those Darius rotors over to make room for a mosque. And they didn't figure a lot of other changes either. So we wound up with this space. But you can still get you some damn good shrimp in the projects. Catfish, too. They had arrived at the wall. It was made of glass, beaded heavily with condensation. A few centimeters beyond it was another wall that made of what looked like rusty sheet steel. Beauvoir fished a key of kind from a pocket in a sharpened rope and slid it into an opening in a bare alloy beam divided into two expanses of window. Somewhere nearby, an engine whined into life. The broad steel shutter rotated up and out, moved jerkily, revealed a view that Bobby had often imagined. They must be near the top, high up in the projects, because big playground was something he could cover with two hands. The condos of Barrytown looked like some gray-white fungus spreading to the horizon. It was nearly dark, and he could make out a pink glow beyond the last range of condo racks. That's the sprawl over there, isn't it? That pink. That's right. But the closer you get, the less pretty it looks. How'd you like to go there, Bobby? Count Zero ready to make the sprawl? Oh, yeah, Bobby said, his palms against the sweating glass. You got no idea. The derm had worn off entirely now, and his back and chest hurt like hell. Chapter 14. Night Flight. As the night came on, Turner found the edge again. It seemed like a long time since he'd been there, but when it clicked in, it was like he'd never left. It was that superhuman synchromesh flow that stimulants only approximated. He could only score for it on the site of a major defection, one where he was in command, and then only in the final hours before the actual move. But it had been a long time. In New Delhi, he'd only been checking out possible escape routes for an executive who wasn't entirely certain that relocation was what he wanted. If he had been working the edge that night in Chandni Chowk, maybe he'd have been able to dodge the thing. Probably not. But the edge would have told him to try. Now, the edge let him collate the factors he had to deal with at the site, balancing clusters of small problems against single larger ones. So far, there were a lot of little ones, but no real ball breakers. Lynch and Weber were starting to get in each other's hair, so he arranged to keep them apart. His conviction that Lynch was Conroy's plant, instinctive from the beginning, was stronger now. Instinct sharpened on the edge. Things got witchy. Nathan was having trouble with the low-tech Swedish hand warmers. Anything short of an electronic circuit baffled him. Turner put Lynch to work on the hand warmers, fueling and priming them, and let Nathan carry them out, two at a time, and bury them shallowly at meter intervals along the two long lines of orange tape. The Microsoft Conroy had sent filled his head with its own universe of constantly shifting factors. Airspeed, altitude, attitude, angle of attack, G-forces, headings. The plane's weapon delivery information was a constant subliminal litany of target designators, bomb fall lines, search circles, range and release cues, weapons counts. Conroy had tagged the Microsoft with a simple message outlining the plane's time of arrival and confirming the arrangement for space for a single passenger. He wondered what Mitchell was doing, feeling. The Moss Biolabs North America facility was carved into the heart of a sheer mesa, a table of rock thrusting from the desert floor. The Biosoft dossier had shown Turner the mesa's face, cut with bright evening windows. It wrote about the uplifted arms of a sea of saguaros, like the wheelhouse of a giant ship. To Mitchell, it had been prison and fortress,
Orbital flight
his home for 9 years. Somewhere near its core, he had perfected the hybridoma techniques that had eluded other researchers for almost a century. Working with human cancer cells and a neglected, nearly forgotten model of DNA synthesis, he had produced the immortal hybrid cells that were the basic production tools of the new technology. Minute biochemical factories, endlessly reproducing the engineered molecules that were linked and built up into biochips. Somewhere in the Moss arcology, Mitchell would be moving through his last hours as their star researcher. Turner tried to imagine Mitchell leading a very different sort of life following his defection to Osaka, but found it difficult.
Frameshift drive charging.
Was a research arcology in Arizona
Ready to
very
engage.
different from one on Honshu? There had been times during that long day when Mitchell's coded memories had risen in him, filling him with a strange dread that seemed to have nothing to do with the operation at hand.
4, 3.
It was the
2,
intimacy of the thing that still
1.
disturbed him,
Engage.
and perhaps the feeling of fear sprang from that. Certain fragments seemed to have an emotional power entirely out of proportion to their content. Why should a memory of a plain hallway in some dingy Cambridge graduate dormitory fill him with a sense of guilt and self-loathing? Other images, which logically should have carried a degree of feeling, were strangely lacking in affect. Mitchell playing with his baby daughter on an expanse of pale woolen broadloom in a
Frameshift
rented
drive
house in
charging.
Geneva. The child laughing, tugging at his hand. Nothing. The man's
4,
life, from Turner's
3,
vantage,
2,
seemed
1.
marked out
Engage.
by a certain inevitability. He was brilliant. A brilliance that had been detected early on. Highly
Warning.
motivated.
Frameshift drive
Gifted at the
operating
kind of
beyond safety
blandly
limits.
ruthless in-company manipulation required by someone who aspired to become a top research scientist. If anyone was destined to rise through laboratory corporate hierarchies, Turner decided, it would be Mitchell. Turner himself was incapable of meshing with the intensely tribal world of the Zaibatsu men, the lifers. He was a perpetual outsider, a rogue factor adrift on the secret seas of intercorporate politics. No company man would have been capable of taking the initiatives Turner was required to take in the course of an extraction. No company man was capable of Turner's professionally casual ability to realign his loyalties to fit a change in employers. Or perhaps of his unyielding commitment once a contract had been agreed upon. He had drifted into security work in his late teens,
Frameshift drive
when the grim
charging.
doldrums of the post-war economy were giving way to the impetus of new
engage.
technologies. He had done well in security, considering his general lack of ambition. He had a ropey, muscular poise that impressed his employer's clients. And he was bright, very bright. He wore clothes well. He had a way with technology.
Conroy had found him in Mexico, where Turner's employer had contracted to provide security for a SenseNet SimStim team who were recording a series of 30-minute segments in an ongoing jungle adventure series. When Conroy arrived, Turner was finishing his arrangements. He'd set up a liaison between SenseNet and the local government, bribed the town's top police official, analyzed the hotel's security system, met the local guides and drivers and had their histories double-checked, arranged for digital voice protection on the SimStim team's transceivers, established a crisis management team, and planted seismic sensors around the SenseNet suite cluster. He entered the hotel's bar, a jungle garden extension of the lobby, and found a seat by himself at one of the glass-topped tables. A pale man with a shock of white bleached hair crossed the bar with a drink in each hand.
Orbital flight
The pale skin was drawn tight across angular features and a high forehead. He wore a neatly pressed military shirt over jeans and leather sandals. "You're the security for those SimStim kids," the pale man said, putting one of the drinks down on Turner's table. "Alfredo told me." Alfredo was one of the hotel bartenders. Turner looked up at the man, who was evidently sober and seemed to have all the confidence in the world. "I don't think we've been introduced," Turner said, making no move to accept the proffered drink. "Doesn't matter," Conroy said, seating himself. "We're in the same ballgame." He seated himself. Turner stared. He had a bodyguard's presence, something restless and watchful written in the lines of his body. And few strangers would so casually violate his private space. "You know," the man said, the way someone might comment on a team that wasn't doing particularly well in a given season, "those seismics you're using really don't make it. I've met people who could walk in there, eat your kids for breakfast, stack the bones in the shower, and stroll out whistling. Those seismics would say it never happened." He took a sip of his drink. "You get A for effort, though. You know how to do a job." The phrase "stack the bones in the shower" was enough. Turner decided to take the pale man out. "Look, Turner, here's your leading lady."
Frameshift drive charging.
The man smiled up at Jane Hamilton, who
4,
smiled back,
3,
her wide
2,
blue eyes clear and
1.
perfect.
Engage.
Each iris ringed with the minute gold lettering of the Zeiss Icon logo. Turner froze,
Warning.
caught in a split-second
Frameshift
lock
drive
of indecision.
operating beyond safety
The
limits.
star was close, too close, and the pale man was rising. "Nice meeting you, Turner," he said. "We'll get together, sooner or later. Take my advice about those seismics. Back 'em up with a perimeter of screamers." And then he turned and walked away, muscles rolling easily beneath the crisp fabric of his tan shirt. "That's nice, Turner," Hamilton said, taking the stranger's place. "Yeah?" Turner watched as the man was lost in the confusion of the crowded lobby, amid pink-fleshed tourists. "You don't ever seem to talk to people. You always look like you're running a make on them, filing a report. It's nice to see you making friends for a change." Turner looked at her. She was 20, 4 years his junior, and earned roughly 9 times his annual salary in a given week. She was
Warning.
blonde,
Frameshift
her hair
drive
cropped
operating
short for the
beyond
series role,
safety limits.
deeply tanned, and looked as if she was illuminated from within by sun lamps. The blue eyes were inhumanly perfect optical instruments grown in vats in Japan. She was both actress and camera.
Warning. Frameshift
Her
drive
eyes were
operating
several
beyond
million
safety
new yen.
limits.
And in the hierarchy of SenseNet stars, she barely rated. He sat with her in the bar until she'd finished 2 drinks, then walked her back to the sweet cluster. "You wouldn't feel like coming in for another, would you, Turner?" "No," he said. This was the second evening she'd made the offer, and he sensed that it would be the last. "I have to check the seismics." Later that night, he phoned New York for the number of a firm in Mexico City that could supply him with screamers for the perimeter of the sweet cluster. But a week later, Jane and 3 others, half the series cast, were dead. "We're ready to roll the medics," Weber said. Turner saw that she was wearing fingerless brown leather gloves. She'd replaced her sunglasses with clear glass shooting glasses, and there was a pistol on her hip. "Sutcliffe's monitoring the perimeter with the remotes. We'll need everybody else to get the fucker through the brush." "Need me?" "Ramirez says he can't do anything too strenuous this close to jacking in. You ask me,
Warning,
he's just a
frameshift drive
lazy little
operating
shit."
beyond safety limits.
"No," Turner said, getting up from his seat on the ledge. "He's right. If he sprained his wrist, we'd be screwed. Even something so minor that he couldn't feel it could affect his speed." Weber shrugged. "Yeah? Well, he's back in the bunker, bathing his hands in the last of our water and humming to himself, so we should be just fine." When they reached the surgery, Turner automatically counted heads. 7. Ramirez was in the bunker. Sutcliffe was somewhere in the cinder block maze, monitoring the sentry remotes. Lynch had a Steiner optic laser slung over his right shoulder, a compact model with a folding alloy skeleton stock, integral batteries forming a fat hand grip below the gray titanium housing that served the thing as a barrel. Nathan was wearing a black jumpsuit, black paratrooper boots filmed with pale dust, and had the bulbous anti-goggles of an image amplification rig dangling below his chin on a head strap. Turner removed his Mexican sunglasses, tucked them into a breast pocket in the blue work shirt, and buttoned the flap. "How's it going, Teddy?" he asked a beefy 6-footer with close-cropped brown hair. "Just fine," Teddy said with a toothy smile. Turner surveyed the other 3 members of the site team, nodding to each man in turn. Compton, Costa, Davis. "Getting down to the wire, huh?" Costa asked. He had a round, moist face and a thin, carefully trimmed beard. Like Nathan and the others, he wore black. "Pretty
Orbital
close,"
flight engaged.
Turner said. "All smooth so far." Costa nodded. "We're an estimated 30 minutes from arrival," Turner said. "Nathan, Davis," Weber said. "Disconnect the sewage line." She handed Turner one of the Telefunken ear bead sets. She'd already removed it from its bubble pack. She put one on herself, peeling the plastic backing from the self-adhesive throat microphone and smoothing it into place on her sunburnt neck. Nathan and Davis were moving in the shadows behind the module. Turner heard Davis curse softly. "Shit," Nathan said. "There's no cap for the end of the tube." The others laughed. "Leave it," Weber said. "Get to work on the wheels. Lynch and Compton, unlimber the jacks." Lynch drew a pistol-shaped power driver from his belt and ducked beneath surgery. It was swaying now, the suspension creaking softly. The medics were moving inside. Turner heard a brief, high-pitched whine from some piece of internal machinery, and then the chatter of Lynch's driver as he readied the jacks. He put his ear bead in and stuck the throat mic beside his larynx. "Sutcliffe, check." "Fine," the Australian said, a tiny voice that seemed to come from the base of his skull. "Ramirez."
Loud and clear. 8 minutes. They were rolling the module out on its 10 fat tires. Turner and Nathan were on the front pair, steering. Nathan had his goggles on. Mitchell was coming out in the dark of the moon. The module was heavy, absurdly heavy, and very nearly impossible to steer. Like balancing a truck on a couple of shopping carts, Nathan said to himself. Turner's lower back was giving him trouble. It hadn't been quite right since New Delhi. "Hold it," Weber said, from the third wheel on the left. "I'm stuck in a fucking rock." Turner released his wheel and straightened up. The bats were out in force tonight, flickering things against the bowl of desert starlight. There were bats in Mexico, in the jungle. Fruit bats that slept in the trees that overhung the sweet cluster where the SenseNet crew slept. Turner had climbed those trees, had strung the overhanging limbs with taut lengths of molecular monofilament, meters of invisible razor waiting for an unwary intruder. But Jane and the others had died anyway, blown away on a hillside in the mountains near Acapulco. Trouble with the labor union, someone said later, but nothing was ever determined, really, other than the fact of the primitive Claymore charge, its placement and the position from which it had been detonated. Turner had climbed the hill himself, his clothes filmed with blood, and seen the nest of crushed undergrowth where the killers had waited, the knife switch and the corroded automobile battery. He found the butts of hand-rolled cigarettes and the cap from a bottle of Bohemia beer, bright and new. The series had to be canceled, and the crisis management team did yeoman duty, arranging the removal of bodies and the repatriation of the surviving members of the cast and crew. Turner was on the last plane out, and after 8 scotches in the lounge of the Acapulco airport, he'd wandered blindly out into the central ticketing area and encountered a man named Bushell, an executive tech from SenseNet's Los Angeles complex. Bushell was pale beneath an LA tan, his seersucker suit limp with sweat. He was carrying a plain aluminum case, like a camera case, its sides dull with condensation. Turner stared at the man, stared at the sweating case, with its red and white warning decals and lengthy labels explaining the precautions required in the transportation of materials in cryogenic storage. "Christ," Bushell said, noticing him.
Low gravity
Turner.
warning.
"I'm sorry, man. Came down this morning. Ugly fucking business." He took a sodden handkerchief from his jacket pocket and wiped his face. "Ugly job. I've never had to do
Cargo
one of these
scoop deployed.
before." "What's in the case, Bushell?" He was much closer now, although he didn't remember stepping forward. He could see the pores in Bushell's tanned face. "You okay, man?" Bushell, taking a step back. "You look bad." "What's in the case, Bushell?" Seersucker bunched in his fist, knuckles white and shaking. "Damn it, Turner!" The man jerking free, the handle of the case clutched in both hands now. "They weren't damaged. Only some minor abrasion on one of the corneas. They belong to the net. It was in her contract, Turner." And he turned away. His guts knotted tight around 8 glasses of straight scotch and fought the nausea. And he'd continued to fight it, held it off for 9 years, until, in his flight from the Dutchman, all the memory of it had come down on him, had fallen on him in London, in Heathrow, and he'd leaned forward, without pausing in his progress down yet another corridor, and vomited into a blue plastic waste canister. "Come on, Turner," Weber said. Put some back in it. Show us how it's done. The module began to strain forward again through the tarry smell of the desert plants. Ready here, Ramirez said, his voice remote and calm. Turner touched the throat mic. I'm sending you some company. He removed his finger from the mic. Nathan, it's time. You and Davis, back to the bunker. Davis was in charge of the squirt gear, their sole non-matrix link with Hosaka. Nathan was Mr. Fix-It. Lynch was rolling the last of the bicycle wheels away into the brush beyond the parking lot. Weber and Compton were kneeling beside the module, attaching the line that linked the Hosaka surgeons with the Sony biomonitor in the command post. With the wheels removed, lowered and leveled on 4 jacks, the portable neurosurgery reminded Turner once again of the French vacation module. That had been a much later trip, 4 years after Conroy had recruited him in Los Angeles. How's it going? Sutcliffe asked over the link. Fine, Turner said, touching the mic. Lonely out here, Sutcliffe said. Compton, Turner said. Sutcliffe needs you to help him cover the perimeter. You too, Lynch. Too bad, Lynch said from the dark. I was hoping I'd get to see the action. Turner's hand was on the grip of the holstered Smith & Wesson under the open flap of the parka. Now, Lynch. If Lynch was Connie's plant, he'd want to be here, or in the bunker. Fuck it, Lynch said. There's nobody out there and you know it. You don't want me here. I'll go in there and watch Ramirez. Right, Turner said and drew the gun, depressing the stud that activated the xenon
Cargo
projector.
hold at maximum capacity.
The first tight beam flash of noon-bright xenon light found a twisted saguaro, its needles like tufts of gray fur in the pitiless illumination. The second lit up the spiked skull of Lynch's belt, framed it in a sharp-edged circle. The sound of the shot and the sound of the bullet detonating on impact were indistinguishable. Waves of concussion rolling out in invisible, ever-widening rings out into the flat, dark land like thunder. In the first few seconds after, there was no sound at all. Even the bats and bugs silenced, waiting. Weber had thrown herself flat in the scrub, and somehow he sensed her there. Now, knew that her gun would be out, held dead steady in those brown, capable hands. He had no idea where Compton was. Then, Sutcliffe's voice, over the ear bead, scratching at him from his brain
Handbrake
pan.
is on.
Turner, what was that? There was enough starlight now to make out Weber. She was sitting up, gun in her hands, ready, her elbows braced on her knees. It was Conroy's plant, Turner said, lowering the Smith & Wesson. Jesus Christ, she said. I'm Conroy's plant. He had a line out, I've seen it before. She had to say it twice. Sutcliffe's
Drive
voice in his
assist on.
head, and then Ramirez. We got your transportation. 80 clicks in closing. Everything else looks clear. There's a blimp 20 clicks south-southwest. Jaylene says unmanned cargo and it's right on schedule. Nothing else. What the fuck's Sut yelling about? Nathan says he heard a shot. Ramirez was jacked in, most of his sensorium taken up with the input from the Moss Neotech deck. Nathan's ready with the first squirt. Turner could hear the jet banking now, braking for the landing on the highway. Weber was up and walking toward him, her gun in her hand. Sutcliffe was asking the same question over and over.
He reached up and touched the throat mic. Lynch. He's dead. The jet's here. This is it. And then the jet was on them. Black shadow, incredibly low, coming in without lights. There was a flare of blowback jets as the thing executed a landing that would have killed a human pilot, and then a weird creaking as it readjusted its articulated carbon fiber airframe.
Drive assist on. Drive assist
Turner could
off.
make out the green reflected glow of instrumentation in the curve of the plastic canopy. "You fucked up," Weber said. Behind her, the hatch in the side of the surgery module popped open, framing a masked figure in a green paper contamination suit. The light from inside was blue-white, brilliant. It threw a distorted shadow of the suited medic out through the thin cloud of dust that hung above the lot in the wake of the jet's landing. "Close it!" Weber shouted. "Not yet!" As the door swung down, shutting out the light, they both heard the ultralight's engine. After the roar of the jet, it seemed no more than the hum of the dragonfly, a drone that stuttered and faded as they listened. "He's out of fuel," Weber said. "But he's close." "He's here," Turner said, pressing the throat mic. First squirt. The tiny plane whispered past them. A dark delta against the stars. They could hear something flapping in the wind of its silent passage. Perhaps one of Mitchell's pants legs. "You're up there," Turner thought. "All alone in the warmest clothes you own, wearing a pair of infrared goggles you built for yourself. And you're looking for a pair of dotted lines picked out for you in hand warmers." "You crazy fucker," he said, his heart filling with a strange admiration. "You really wanted out bad." Then the first flare went up, with a festive little pop, and the magnesium glare began its slow white parachute ride to the desert floor. Almost immediately there were two more, and the long rattle of automatic fire from the west end of the mall. He was peripherally aware of Weber stumbling through the brush in the direction of the bunker, but his eyes were fixed on the wheeling ultralight, on its gay orange and blue fabric wings, and the goggled figure hunched there in the open metal framework above the fragile tripod landing gear. Mitchell. The lot was bright as a football field under the drifting flares. The ultralight banked and turned with a lazy grace that made Turner want to scream. A line of tracers hosed out in a white arc from beyond the site perimeter. Missed. Get it down. Get it down. He was running, jumping clumps of brush that caught at his ankles, at the hem of his parka. The flares. The light. Mitchell couldn't use the goggles now, couldn't see the infrared glow of the hand warmers. He was bringing it in, wide of the strip. The nose wheel caught in something, and the ultralight cartwheeled, crumpling, torn butterfly, and then lay down in its own white cloud of dust. The flash of the explosion seemed to reach him an instant before the sound, throwing his shadow before him across the pale brush. The concussion picked him up and threw him down, and as he fell, he saw the broken surgery module in a ball of yellow flame and knew that Weber had used her anti-tank rocket. Then he was up again, moving, running, the gun in his hand. He reached the wreckage of Mitchell's ultralight as the first flare died. Another one arced out of nowhere and blossomed overhead. The sound of firing was continuous now. He scrambled over a twisted sheet of rusted tin and found the sprawled figure of the pilot, head and face concealed by a makeshift helmet and a clumsy-looking goggle rig.
The goggles were fastened to the helmet with dull silver strips of gaffer tape. The twisted limbs were padded in layers of dark clothing. Turner watched his hands claw at the tape, tear at the infrared goggles. His hands were distant creatures, pale undersea things that lived a life of their own far down at the bottom of some unthinkable Pacific trench. And he watched as they tore frantically at tape, goggles, helmet, until it all came away, and the long brown hair, limp with sweat, fell across the girl's white face, smearing the thin trickle of dark blood that ran from one nostril. And her eyes opened, revealing empty white.
Is on.
And he was tugging her up somehow into a fireman's carry and reeling in what he hoped was the direction of the jet.
Ship dismissed.
He felt the second explosion through the soles of his deck
Cargo
shoes
scoop deployed.
and saw the idiot grin on the lump of plastique that sat on Ramirez's cyberspace deck. There was no flash, only sound and the sting of concussion through the concrete of the lot. And then he was in the cockpit, breathing the new car smell of long chain monomers, the familiar scent of newly minted technology. And the girl was behind him, an awkward doll sprawled in the embrace of the G-Web that Conroy had paid a San Diego arms dealer to install behind the pilot's web. The plane was quivering, a live thing, and as he squirmed deeper into his own web, he fumbled for the interface cable, found it, ripped the Microsoft from his socket, and slid the cable jack home. Knowledge lit him like an arcade game, and he surged forward with the plainness of the jet, feeling the flexible airframe reshape itself for jump-off as the canopy whined smoothly down on its servos. The G-Web ballooned around him, locking his limbs rigid, the gun still in his hand. Go, motherfucker. But the jet already knew, and G-force crushed him down into the dark. You lost consciousness, the plane said. Its chip voice sounded vaguely like Conroy. How long? 38 seconds. Where are we? Over Nagos. The head-up display lit. A dozen constantly altered figures beneath a simplified map of the Arizona-Sonora line. The sky went white. What was that? Silence. What was that? Sensors indicate an explosion, the plane said. The magnitude suggests a tactical nuclear warhead. But there was no electromagnetic pulse. The locus of destruction was our point of departure. The white glow faded and was gone. Cancel course, he said. Canceled. New headings, please. That's a good question, Turner said. He couldn't turn his head to look at the girl behind him. He wondered if she were dead yet. Chapter 15. Box. Marley dreamed of Ala, dusk in a wildflower field, and he cradled her head, then caressed and broke her neck.
Cargo hold at maximum
Lay there
capacity.
unmoving, but she knew what he was doing. He kissed her all over. He took her money and the keys to her room. The stars were huge now, fixed above the bright fields, and she could still feel his hands on her neck. She woke in the coffee-scented morning and saw the squares of sunlight spread across the books on Andrea's table. Heard Andrea's comfortingly familiar morning cough as she lit a first cigarette from the stove's front burner. She shook off the dark colors of the dream and sat up on Andrea's couch, hugging the dark red quilt around her knees. After Nas, after the police and the reporters, She'd never dreamed of him. Or if she did, she'd guessed she somehow censored the dreams, erased them before she woke. She shivered, although it was already a warm morning, and went into the bathroom. She wanted no more dreams of Alan. Paco told me that Alan was armed when we met. She said when Andrea handed her the blue enamel mug of coffee. Alan armed? Andrea divided the omelet and slid half onto Marley's plate. What a bizarre idea. It would be like arming a penguin. They both laughed. Alan is not the type, Andrea said. He'd shoot his foot off in the middle of some passionate declaration about the state of art and the amount of the dinner bill. He's a big shit, Alan, but that's hardly news. If I were you, I'd expend a bit more worry on this Paco. What reason do you have for accepting that he works for Virek? She took a bite of omelet and reached for the salt. I saw him. He was there in Virek's construct. You saw something. An image only, the image of a child which only resembled this man. Marley watched Andrea eat her half of the omelet, letting her own grow cold on the plate. How could she explain about the scent she'd had walking from the Louvre? The conviction that something surrounded her now, monitoring her with relaxed precision, that she had become the focus of at least a part of Virek's empire. He's a very wealthy man, she began. Virek? Andrea put her knife and fork down on the plate and took up her coffee. I should say he is. If you believe the journalists, he's the single wealthiest individual, period. As rich as some Zaibatsu. But there's the catch, really. Is he an individual? In the sense that you are or I am? No. Aren't you going to eat that? Marley began to mechanically cut and fork sections of the cooling omelet, while Andrea continued. You should look at the manuscript we're working on this month. Marley chewed, raised her eyebrows questioningly. It's a history of the high-orbit industrial clans. A man at the University of Nice did it. Your Virek's even in it, come to think.
Capacity.
He's cited as a counterexample, or rather as a type of parallel evolution. This fellow at Nice is interested in the paradox of individual wealth in a corporate age, and why it should still exist at all. Great wealth, I mean. He sees the high-orbit clans, people like the Tessier Ashpools, as a very late variant on traditional patterns of aristocracy. Late because the corporate mode doesn't really allow for an aristocracy. She put her cup down on her plate and carried the plate to the sink. Actually, now that I've started to describe it, it isn't that interesting. There's a great deal of very gray prose about the nature of mass man. With caps, mass man. He's big on caps, not much of a stylist. She spun the taps and water hissed out through the filtration unit. But what does he say about Virek? He says, if I remember all this correctly, and I'm not at all certain that I do, that Virek is an even greater fluke than the industrial clans in orbit. The clans are transgenerational, and there's usually a fair bit of medicine involved. Cryogenics, genetic manipulation, various ways to combat aging. The death of a given clan member, even a founding member, usually wouldn't bring the clan, as a business entity, to a crisis point. There's always someone to step in, someone waiting. The difference between a clan and a corporation, however, is that you don't need to literally marry into a corporation. But they sign indentures. Andrea shrugged. That's like a lease. It isn't the same thing. It's job security, really. But when your Herr Vierick dies, finally, when they run out of room to enlarge his vat, whatever, his business interests will lack a logical focus. At that point, our man in Nice has it, you'll see Vierick and company either fragment or mutate. The latter giving us the something company and a true multinational. Yet another home for capital M Massman. She wiped her plate, rinsed it, dried it, and placed it in the pine rack beside the sink. He says that's too bad in a way because there are so few people left who can even see the edge. The edge? The edge of the crowd. We're lost in the middle, you and I. Or I still am, at any rate. She crossed the kitchen and put her hands on Marley's shoulders. You want to take care in this. A part of you is already much happier. But now I see that I could have brought that about myself, simply by arranging a little lunch for you with your pig of a former lover. The rest of it, I'm not sure. I think our academic's theory is invalidated by the obvious fact that Vierick and his kind are already far from human. I want you to be careful. Then she kissed Marley's cheek and went off to her work as an assistant editor in the fashionably archaic business of printing books. She spent the morning at Andrea's with the Brown, viewing the holograms of the 7 works. Each piece was extraordinary in its own way, but she repeatedly returned to the box Vierick had shown her first. If I had the original here, she thought, and removed the glass, and one by one removed the objects inside, what would be left? Useless things, a frame of space, perhaps a smell like dust. She sprawled on the couch, the Brown resting on her stomach, and stared into the box. It ached. It seemed to her that the construction evoked something perfectly, but it was an emotion that lacked a name. She ran her hands through the bright illusion, tracing the length of the fluted avian bone. She was certain that Vierick had already assigned an ornithologist the task of identifying the bird from whose wing that bone had come, and it would be possible to date each object with the greatest precision, she supposed. Each tab of Hollowfish also housed an extensive report on the known origin of each piece, but something in her had deliberately avoided these.
Cargo scoop deployed.
It was sometimes best, when you came to the mystery that was art, to come as a child. The child saw things that were too evident, too obvious for the trained eye. She put the Brown down on the low table beside the couch and crossed to Andrea's phone, intending to check the time. She was meeting Paco at 1 to discuss the mechanics of Alan's payment. Alan had told her he would phone her at Andrea's at 3. When she punched for the time service, an automatic recap of satellite news strobed across the screen. A JAL shuttle had disintegrated during re-entry over the Indian Ocean. Investigators from the Boston-Atlanta Metropolitan Axis had been called in to examine the site of a brutal and apparently pointless bombing in a drab New Jersey residential suburb. Militiamen were supervising the evacuation of the southern quadrant of New Bonn, following the discovery by construction workers of 2 undetonated wartime rockets, believed to be armed with biological weapons. And official sources in Arizona were denying Mexico's accusation of the detonation of a small-scale atomic or nuclear device near the Sonora border. As she watched, the recap cycled, and the simulation of the shuttle began its fire death again. She shook her head, tapping the button. It was noon. Summer had come, the sky hot and blue above Paris, and she smiled at the smell of good bread and black tobacco.
Cargo scoop retracted. Cargo scoop deployed. Cargo hold at maximum capacity. Cargo scoop retracted. Landing gear retracted. Frameshift drive charging. Ready to engage. Four, three, two, one, engage. Frameshift drive charging. 4, 3, 2, 1, engage. Warning, frameshift drive operating beyond safety limits. Frameshift drive charging. Four, three, two, one, engage.
Summer had come, the task of identifying the bird from whose wing that bone had come, and it would be possible to date each object with the greatest precision, she supposed. Each tab of Apollo-fiche also housed an extensive report on the known origin of each piece, but something in her had deliberately avoided these. It was sometimes best, when you came to the mystery that was art, to come as a child. The child saw things that were too evident, too obvious for the trained eye.
Fuel scooping.
She put the brown down on the low table beside the couch and crossed to Andrea's phone, intending to check the time. She was meeting Paco at 1 to discuss the mechanics of Alan's payment. Alan had told her he would phone her at Andrea's at 3. When she punched for the time service, an automatic recap of satellite news strobed across the screen. A JAL shuttle had disintegrated during re-entry over the Indian Ocean. Investigators from the Boston-Atlanta Metropolitan Axis had been called in to examine the site of a brutal and apparently pointless bombing in a drab New Jersey residential suburb. Militiamen were supervising the evacuation of the southern quadrant of New Bonn, following the discovery by construction workers of 2 undetonated wartime rockets, believed to be armed with biological weapons. And official sources in Arizona were denying Mexico's accusation of the detonation of a small-scale atomic or nuclear device near the Sonora border. As she watched, the recap cycled, and the simulation of the shuttle began its fire death again. She shook her head, tapping the button.
Fuel scooping.
It was noon. Summer had come, the sky hot and blue above Paris, and she smiled at the smell of good bread and black tobacco. Her sense of being observed had receded now, as she walked from the metro to the address Paco had given her.
Frameshift drive charging.
Faubourg Saint-Honoré. The address seemed vaguely familiar. A gallery, she thought. Yes, the Roberts. The owner, an American, who operated 3 galleries in New York as well.
1.
Expensive, but no longer quite chic. Paco was waiting beside an enormous panel on which were layered, beneath a thick and uneven coat of varnish, hundreds of small square photographs, the kind produced by certain very old-fashioned machines in train stations and bus terminals. All of them seemed to be of young girls.
Fuel scooping.
Automatically, she noted the name of the artist and the work's title. Read us the Book of the Names of the Dead. I suppose you understand this sort of thing, the Spaniard said glumly.
Fuel scooping complete.
He wore an expensive-looking blue suit, cut in Parisian business style, a white broadcloth shirt, and a very English-looking tie, probably from Charvet.
Charging.
He didn't look at all like a waiter now. There was an Italian bag of black-ribbed rubber slung over his shoulder.
Frameshift drive charging.
What do you mean? She asked. Names of the dead. And he nodded in the direction of the panel. You are a dealer in these things.
4.
What don't you understand?
3, 2, 1.
I sometimes
Engage.
feel as though this culture is entirely a trick. A ruse. All my life I have served Senor in one guise or another, you understand? And my work has not been without its satisfactions, moments of triumph. But never,
Fuel
when he
scooping.
involved me with this business of art, have I felt any satisfaction. He is well
Fuel scooping
said.
complete.
The world is filled with objects of great beauty. And yet Senor pursues. He shrugged. You know what you like then? She
Frameshift
smiled at
drive
him.
charging.
Why did you choose this gallery for our meeting? Senor's agent purchased one of the boxes here. Haven't you read the histories we provided you with in Brussels?
4,
No,
3,
she said.
2,
It
1.
might interfere with my
Engage.
intuition. Herr Viereck is paying me for my intuition. He raised his eyebrows. I will introduce you to Picard, the manager. Perhaps he can do something for this intuition of yours. He led her across the room and through a
Fuel
doorway.
scooping.
A graying, heavy-set Frenchman in a rumpled corduroy suit was speaking into the handset
Fuel
of a
scooping
phone.
complete.
On the phone screen, she saw columns of letters and figures. The day's quotations on the New York market.
Warning. Temperature critical.
The man said.
Esteves, excuse me, only a moment.
He smiled apologetically and returned to his conversation. Marley studied the quotations. Pollock was down again. This, she supposed, was the aspect of art that she had the most difficulty understanding. Picard, if that was the man's name, was speaking with a broker in New York, arranging the purchase of a certain number of points of the work of a particular artist. A point might be defined in any number of ways, depending on the medium involved. But it was almost certain that Picard would never see the works he was purchasing. If the artist enjoyed sufficient status, the originals were very likely crated away in some vault where no one saw them at all. Days or years later, Picard might pick up that same phone and order the broker to sell. Marley's gallery had sold originals. There was relatively little money in it, but it had a certain visceral appeal. And of course there had been the chance that one would get lucky. She had convinced herself that she'd gotten very lucky indeed when Alan had arranged for the forged Cornell to surface as a wonderful accidental find. Cornell had his place on the broker's board, and his points were very expensive. Picard, Paco said, as though he were addressing a servant. This is Marley Khrushcheva. Senor has brought her into the matter of the anonymous boxes. She may wish to ask you questions.
Charmed,
Picard said and smiled warmly, but she thought she detected a flicker in his brown eyes. Very likely he was trying to connect the name to some scandal, relatively recent. I understand that your gallery handled the transaction then?
Yes,
Picard said.
we had displayed the work in our New York rooms, and it had attracted a number of bids. We decided to give it its day in Paris, however.
He beamed.
And your employer made our decision most worthwhile. How is Herr Virek Esteves?
Hull
We have
integrity
not seen him in
compromised.
several weeks.
Marley glanced quickly at Paco, but his dark face was smooth, utterly controlled.
Senor is very well, I would think.
He said.
Excellent.
Said Picard, somewhat too enthusiastically. He turned to Marley.
A marvelous man. A legend. A great patron. A great scholar.
Marley thought she heard Paco sigh. Could you tell me, please, where your New York branch obtained the work in question? Picard's face fell. He looked at Paco, then back at Marley.
You don't know? They haven't told you?
Could you tell me,
Frameshift drive
please?
charging.
No.
Picard said.
4, 3,
I'm
2,
sorry, but I can't.
1. Engage.
You see, we don't know.
Marley stared at him. I beg your pardon, but I don't quite see how that is possible. She hasn't read the report, Picard. You tell her. It will be good for her intuition to hear it from your own lips. Picard gave Paco an odd
Orbital
look,
flight engaged.
then regained his composure.
Certainly.
He said.
A pleasure.
Do you think it's true? She asked Paco, as they stepped out into Faubourg Saint-Honoré and summer sunlight. The crowds were thick with Japanese tourists. I went to the sprawl myself, Paco said, and interviewed everyone involved. Roberts left no record of the purchase, although ordinarily he was no more secretive than the next art dealer. And his death was accidental? He put on a pair of mirrored Porsche glasses. As accidental as that sort of death ever is, he said. We have no way of knowing when or how he obtained the piece.
We located it here 8 months ago, and all our attempts to work backward end with Roberts. And Roberts has been dead for a year. Picard neglected to tell you that they very nearly lost the thing. Roberts kept it in his country house, along with a number of other things that his survivors regarded as mere curiosities. The whole lot came close to being sold at public auction. Sometimes I wish it had been.
These other things, she asked, falling into step beside him. What are they?
He smiled. Do you think we haven't tracked them, each one? We have. They were. Here he frowned, exaggerating the effort of memory. A number of rather unremarkable examples of contemporary folk art.
Was Roberts known to be interested in that sort of thing?
No, he said. But approximately a year before his death, we know that he made application for membership in the Institut de l'Art Brut here in Paris and arranged to become a patron of the Ashman collection in Hamburg.
Marley nodded. The Ashman collection was restricted to the works of psychotics.
We are reasonably certain.
Paco continued, taking her elbow and guiding her around a corner into a side street.
That he made no attempt to use the resources of either, unless he employed an intermediary, and we regard that as unlikely. Senor, of course, has employed several dozen scholars to sweep the records of both institutions, to no avail.
Tell me, she said, why Picard assumed that he had recently seen Herr Viereck. How is that possible?
Senor is wealthy. Senor enjoys any number of means of manifestation.
Now he led her into a chrome-trimmed barn of a place, glittering with mirrors, bottles, and arcade games. The mirrors lied about the depth of the room. At its rear, she could see the reflected pavement, the legs of pedestrians, the flash of sunlight on a hubcap. Paco nodded to a lethargic-looking man behind the bar and took her hand, leading her through the tightly packed shoal of round plastic tables.
You can take your call from Alan here, he said. We have arranged to reroute it from your friend's apartment.
He drew a chair out for her, an automatic bit of professional courtesy that made her wonder if he might actually once have been a waiter, and placed his bag on the tabletop. But he'll see that I'm not here, she said. If I blank the video, he'll become suspicious.
But he won't see that. We've generated a digital image of your face and the required background. We'll key that to the image on this phone.
He took an elegant, modular unit from the bag and placed it in front of her. A paper-thin polycarbon screen unfurled silently from the top of the unit and immediately grew rigid. She had once watched a butterfly emerge into the world and seen the transformation of its drying wings.
Low gravity
How is that
warning.
done? She asked, tentatively touching the screen. It was like thin steel.
One of the new polycarbon variants, he said. One of the mass products.
The phone purred discreetly. He positioned it more carefully in front of her, stepped to the far side of the table and said,
Your call. Remember, you are at home.
He reached forward and brushed a titanium-coated stud. Alan's face and shoulders filled the little screen. The image had the smudged, badly lit look of a public booth.
Good afternoon, my dear, he said.
Hello, Alan.
How are you, Marley? I trust you've gotten the money we discussed?
She could see that he was wearing a jacket of some kind, dark, but she could make out no details.
Your roommate could do with a lesson in house cleaning,
he said, and seemed to be peering back over her shoulder. You've never cleaned a room in your life, she said. He shrugged, smiling.
We each have our talents, he said. Do you have my money, Lally?
She glanced up at Paco, who nodded.
Yes, she said. Of course.
That's wonderful, Molly. Marvelous. We have only one small difficulty.
He was still smiling. And what is that?
My informants have doubled their price. Consequently, I must now double mine.
Paco nodded.
Handbrake is on.
He was smiling too.
Very well. I will have to ask, of course.
He sickened her now. She wanted to be off the phone.
And they, of course, will agree.
Where shall we meet then?
I will phone again at 5, he said.
His image shrank to a single blip of blue-green. And then that was gone as well.
You look tired,
Paco said, as he collapsed the screen and replaced the phone in his bag.
You look older when you've talked with him.
Do I?
For some reason now, she saw the panel in the Roberts, all those faces. Read us the book of the names of the dead. All the Marleys, she thought, all the girls she'd been through the long season of youth. Chapter 16. Legba.
Hey, shithead.
Rhea poked him none too lightly in the ribs. Get your ass up. He came up fighting with the crocheted comforter, with the half-formed shapes of unknown enemies, with his mother's murderers. He was in a room he didn't know, a room that might have been anywhere. Gold plastic gilt frames and a lot of mirrors. Fuzzy scarlet wallpaper. He'd seen Gothics decorate rooms that way when they could afford it. But he'd also seen their parents do whole condos in the same style. Rhea flung a bundle of clothes down into the temper form and shoved her hands in the pockets of a black leather jacket. The pink and black squares of the comforter were bunched around his waist. He looked down and saw the segmented length of the centipede submerged in a finger-wide track of fresh pink scar tissue. Beauvoir had said that the thing accelerated healing. He touched the bright new tissue with a hesitant fingertip, found it tender but bearable. He looked up at Rhea.
Get your ass up on this, he said, giving her the finger.
They glared at each other for a few seconds over Bobby's upraised middle finger. Then she laughed.
Okay, she said.
Cargo hold
You got a
at
point.
maximum capacity.
I'll get off your case. But pick those clothes up and get 'em on. Should be something there that fits. Lucas is due by here soon to pick you up, and Lucas doesn't like to be kept waiting.
Yeah? Well, he seems like a pretty relaxed guy to me.
He began to sort through the heap of clothing, discarding a black shirt with a paisley pattern printed on it in laundered-out gold, a red satin number with a fringe of white imitation leather down the sleeves, a black sort of leotard thing with panels of some translucent material.
Hey, he said. Where did you get this stuff? I can't wear shit like this.
It's my little brother's, Rhea said. From last season. And you better get your white ass dressed before Lucas gets down here. Hey, she said. That's mine. Snatching up the leotard as though he might be about to steal it. He pulled the black and gold shirt on and fumbled with domed snaps made of black imitation pearl. He found a pair of black jeans, but they proved to be baggy and elaborately pleated, and didn't seem to have any pockets.
This is all the pants you got?
Jesus, she said.
I saw the clothes Pa cut off you, man. You aren't anybody's idea of a fashion plate. Just get dressed, okay? I don't want any trouble with Lucas. He may come on all mellow with you, but that just means you got something he wants bad enough to take the trouble. Me, I sure don't. So Lucas got no compunctions as far as I'm concerned. He stood up unsteadily beside the bed slab and tried to zip up the black jeans. No zip, he said, looking at her. Buttons in there somewhere. It's part of the style, you know? Bobby found the buttons. It was an elaborate arrangement, and you wondered what would happen if he had to piss in a hurry. He saw the black nylon thongs beside the slab and shoved his feet into them. What about Jackie? He asked, patting to where he could see himself in the gold-framed mirrors. Lucas got any compunctions about her? He watched her in the mirror, saw something cross her face. What's that mean? Beauvoir. He told me she was a horse. You hush, she said, her voice gone low and urgent. Beauvoir mentioned anything like that to you, that's his business. Otherwise, it's nothing you talk about, understand? There's things bad enough. You'd wish you were back out there getting your butt carved up. He watched her eyes, reflected in the mirror. Dark eyes shadowed by the deep brim of the soft felt hat. Now they seemed to show a little more white than they had before. Okay, he said after a pause, and then added, thanks. He fiddled with the collar of the shirt, turning it up in the back, down again, trying it different ways. You know, Rhea said, tilting her head to one side, you get a few clothes on you, you don't look too bad. Except you got eyes like two piss holes in a snowbank. Lucas, Bobby said when they were in the elevator. Do you know who it was offed my old lady? It wasn't a question he'd planned on asking, but somehow it had come rushing up like a bubble of swamp gas. Lucas regarded him benignly, his long face smooth and black. His black suit, beautifully cut, looked as though it had been freshly pressed. He carried a stout stick of oiled and polished wood, a grain all swirly black and red, topped with a large knob of polished brass. Finger-long splines of brass ran down from the knob, inlaid smoothly in the cane shaft. No, we do not. His wide lips formed a straight and very serious line. That's something we'd very much like to know. Bobby shifted uncomfortably. The elevator made him self-conscious. It was the size of a small bus, and although it wasn't crowded, he was the only white. Black people, he noted, as his eyes shifted restlessly down the thing's length, didn't look half dead under fluorescent light the way white people did. 3 times in their descent, the elevator came to a halt at some floor and remained there. Once for nearly 15 minutes. The first time this happened, Bobby had looked questioningly at Lucas. Something in the shaft, Lucas had said. What? Another elevator. The elevators were located at the core of the arcology, their shafts bundled together with water mains, sewage lines, huge power cables, and insulated pipes that Bobby assumed were part of the geothermal system that Beauvoir had described. You could see it all whenever the doors opened. Everything was exposed, raw, as though the people who built the place had wanted to be able to see exactly how everything worked and what was going where. And everything, every visible surface, was covered with an interlocking net of graffiti, so dense and heavily overlaid that it was almost impossible to pick out any kind of message or symbol. You never were up here before, were you, Bobby? Lucas asked,
as the doors jolted shut once again and they were on their way down. Bobby shook his head. "That's too bad," Lucas said. "Understandable, certainly, but kind of a shame. Two-a-day tells me you haven't been too keen on sitting around Barrytown. That true?"
Sure is,
Bobby agreed. "I guess that's understandable, too. You seem to me to be a young man of some imagination and initiative. Would you agree?" Lucas spun the cane's bright brass head against his pink palm and looked at Bobby steadily.
I guess so. I can't stand the place. Lately I've kind of been noticing how, well, nothing ever happens, you know? I mean, things happen, but it's always the same stuff over and fucking over. Like it's all a rerun every summer like the last one.
His voice trailed off, uncertain what Lucas would think of him. "Yes," Lucas said. "I know that feeling. It may be a little more true of Barrytown than some other places, but you can feel the same thing as easily in New York or Tokyo."
Can't be true, Bobby thought, but nodded anyway, Rhea's warning in the back of his head.
Lucas was no more threatening than Beauvoir, but his bulk alone was a caution. And Bobby was working on a new theory of personal deportment. He didn't quite have the whole thing yet, but part of it involved the idea that people who were genuinely dangerous might not need to exhibit the fact at all, and that the ability to conceal a threat made them even more dangerous. This ran directly opposite to the rule around Big Playground, where kids who had no real clout whatever went to great pains to advertise their chrome-studded rabidity, which probably did them some good, at least in terms of the local action.
Cargo scoop
But
retracted.
Lucas was very clearly nothing to do with local action. "I see you doubt it," Lucas said. "Well, you'll probably find out soon enough, but not for a while. The way your life's going now, things should remain new and exciting for quite a while." The elevator door shuddered open and Lucas was moving, shooing Bobby in front of him like a child. They stepped out into a tiled foyer that seemed to stretch forever, past kiosks and cloth-draped stalls and people squatting beside blankets with things spread out on them. "But not to linger," Lucas said,
Cargo scoop deployed.
giving Bobby a very gentle shove with one large hand when Bobby paused in front of stacks of jumbled software. "You are on your way to the sprawl, my man, and you are going in a manner that befits a count."
How's that?
"In a limo."
Lucas's car was an amazing stretch of gold-flecked black bodywork and mirror-finished brass, studded with a collection of Baroque gadgets whose purpose Bobby only had time to guess at. One of the things was a dish antenna, he decided, but it looked more like one of those Aztec calendar wheels. And then he was inside, Lucas letting the wide door clunk gently shut behind them. The windows were tinted so dark it looked like nighttime outside, a bustling nighttime, where the project's crowds went about their noonday business. The interior of the vehicle was a single large compartment, padded with bright rugs and pale leather cushions, although there seemed to be no particular place to sit. No steering wheel either. The dash was a padded expanse of leather, unbroken by controls of any kind. He looked at Lucas, who was loosening his black tie. "How do you drive it?"
"Sit down somewhere. You drive it like this. Ahmed, get our asses to New York, Lower East." The car slid smoothly away from the curb as Bobby dropped to his knees on a soft pile of rugs.
Lunch will be served in 30 minutes, sir. Unless you'd care for something sooner, a voice said.
It was soft, melodious, and seemed to come from nowhere in particular.
Lucas laughed. They really knew how to build them in Damascus,
he said. Where?
Damascus,
Lucas said as he unbuttoned his suit coat and settled back into a wedge of pale cushions.
This is a Rolls. Old one. Those Arabs built a good car while they had the money.
Lucas, Bobby said, his mouth half full of cold fried chicken. How come it's taking us an hour and a half to get to New York? We aren't exactly crawling.
Because,
Lucas said, pausing for another sip of cold white wine.
That's how long it's taken us. Ahmed has all the factory options. Includes a first-rate counter-surveillance system. On the road, Roland, Ahmed provides a remarkable degree of privacy. More than I'm ordinarily willing to pay for in New York. Ahmed, you get the feeling anybody's trying to get to us? Listen in or anything?
No, sir, the voice said. 8 minutes ago, our identification panel was infrascanned by a tactical helicopter. The helicopter's number was MH-3-848, piloted by Corporal Roberto.
Okay, Lucas said. Fine. Never mind. You see? Ahmed got more on those tacks than they got on us.
He wiped his hands on a thick white linen napkin and took a gold toothpick from his jacket pocket. Lucas, Bobby said, while Lucas probed delicately at the gaps between his big square teeth. What would happen if, say, I asked you to take me to Times Square and let me out?
Ah, Lucas said, lowering the toothpick. The city's most resonant acre. What's the matter, Bobby? A drug problem?
Well, no, but I was wondering...
Wondering what? You want to go to Times Square?
No, that was just the first place I thought of. What I mean is, I guess... Would you let me go?
No, Lucas said. Not to put too fine a point on it. But you don't have to think of yourself as a prisoner. More like a guest. A valued guest.
Bobby smiled, wanly. Oh, okay. Like what they call protective custody, I guess?
Right,
Lucas said, bringing the gold toothpick into play again.
And while we are here, securely screened by the good Ahmed, it's time we have a talk. Brother Beauvoir has already told you a little about us, I think. What do you think, Bobby, about what he's told you?
Well, Bobby said, it's real interesting, but I'm not sure I understand it.
What don't you understand?
Well, I don't know about this voodoo stuff.
Lucas raised his eyebrows.
I mean, it's your business what you want to buy. I mean, believe, right? But 1 minute Beauvoir's talking biz, street tech like I never heard before, and the next he's talking mambos and ghosts and snakes and
what?
Horses, Bobby said, his throat tight.
Bobby, do you know what a metaphor is?
Component? Like a capacitor?
No. Never mind metaphor, then. When Beauvoir or I talk to you about the Loa and their horses, as we call those few the Loa choose to ride, you should pretend that we are talking two languages at once. One of them you already understand. That's the language of street tech, as you call it. We may be using different words, but we're talking tech.
Maybe we call something ugu ferre that you might call an icebreaker, you understand? But at the same time, with the same words, we are talking about other things, and that you don't understand. You don't need to.
He put his toothpick away. Bobby took a deep breath.
Beauvoir said that Jackie is a horse for a snake. A snake called Donbala. You run that by me in street tech?
Certainly. Think of Jackie as a deck, Bobby. A cyberspace deck. A very pretty one with nice angles.
Lucas grinned and Bobby blushed.
Think of Donbala, who some people call the snake, as a program. Say as an icebreaker. Donbala slots into the Jackie deck. Jackie cuts ice. That's all.
Okay,
Bobby said, getting the hang of it.
then what's the Matrix? If she's a deck and Donbala's a program, what's cyberspace?
The world, Lucas said. Best if we walk from here,
Lucas said. The rolls came to a silent, silken halt, and Lucas stood, buttoning his suit coat.
Ahmed attracts too much attention.
He picked up his cane, and the door made a soft, chunking sound as it unlocked itself. Bobby climbed down behind him into the unmistakable signature smell of the sprawl. A rich amalgam of stale subway exhalations, ancient soot, and the carcinogenic tang of fresh plastics. All of it shot through with the carbon edge of illicit fossil fuels. High overhead, in the reflected glare of arc lamps, one of the unfinished Fuller domes shut out 2/3 of the salmon-pink evening sky, its ragged edge like broken gray honeycomb. The sprawl's patchwork of domes tended to generate inadvertent microclimates. There were areas of a few city blocks where a fine drizzle of condensation fell continually from the soot-stained geodesics, and sections of high dome famous for displays of static discharge, a peculiarly urban variety of lightning. There was a stiff wind blowing as Bobby followed Lucas down the street. A warm, gritty breeze that probably had something to do with pressure shifts in the sprawl-long subway system.
Remember what I told you,
Lucas said, his eyes narrowed against the grit.
The man is far more than he seems. Even if he were nothing more than what he seems, you would owe him a degree of respect. If you want to be a cowboy, you're about to meet a landmark in the trade.
Yeah, right.
He skipped to avoid a graying length of printout that tried to wrap itself around his ankle.
So he's the one you and Beauvoir bought the...
Ha! No. Remember what I told you. You speak in the open street. You may as well put your words up on a bulletin board.
Bobby grimaced, then nodded.
Shit. He kept blowing it. Here he was with a major operator up to his neck in some amazing kind of biz, and he kept acting like a Wilson. Operator. That was the word for Lucas and for Beauvoir, too. And that voodoo talk was just some game they ran on people, he decided. In the rolls, Lucas had launched into some strange extended number about Legba, who he said was the Loa of communication, the master of roads and pathways, all about how the man he was taking Bobby to meet was a favorite of Legba's. When Bobby asked if the man was another Ungong, Lucas said no. He said the man had walked with Legba all his life, so close that he'd never known the Loa was there at all, like it was just a part of him, his shadow. And this was the man Lucas had said who'd sold them the software that Two-A-Day had rented to Bobby. Lucas rounded a corner and stopped, Bobby close behind. They stood in front of a blackened brownstone, whose windows had been sealed decades before with sheets of corrugated steel. Part of the ground floor had once been a shop of some kind, its cracked display windows opaque with grime. The door between the blind windows had been reinforced with the same steel that sealed the windows of the upper floors, and Bobby thought he could make out some sort of sign behind the window to his left, discarded neon script, tilted diagonally in the gloom. Lucas just stood there, facing the doorway, his face expressionless, the tip of his cane planted neatly on the sidewalk, and his large hands one atop the other on the brass knob.
First thing that you learn,
he said, with the tone of a man reciting a proverb,
is that you always gotta wait.
Bobby thought he heard something scrape behind the door, and then there was a rattle like chains.
Amazing,
Lucas said.
Almost as though we were expected.
Cargo hold at maximum capacity.
The door swung 10 centimeters on well-oiled hinges and seemed to catch on something. An eye regarded them, unblinking, suspended there in that crack of dust and dark. And at first it seemed to Bobby that it must be the eye of some large animal. The iris, the strange shade of brownish yellow, and the whites mottled and shot through with red, the lower lid gaping redder still below.
Hoodoo man,
said the invisible face the eye belonged to. Then,
Hoodoo man and some little lump of shit.
Jesus!
Cargo scoop.
There was an awful
retracted.
gurgling sound, as of antique phlegm being drawn up from hidden recesses, and then the man spat.
Well, move it, Lucas.
There was another grating sound, and the door swung inward on the dark.
I'm a busy man.
This last from a meter away, receding, as though the eye's owner was scurrying from the light, admitted by the open door. Lucas stepped through, Bobby on his heels, Bobby feeling the door swing smoothly shut behind him. The sudden darkness brought the hairs on his forearms up. It felt alive, that dark, cluttered and dense and somehow sentient. Then a match flared and some sort of pressure lamp hissed and spat as the gas in its mantle ignited. Bobby could only gape at the face beyond the lantern, where the bloodshot yellow eye waited with its mate in what Bobby would very much have liked to believe was a mask of some kind.
I don't suppose you were expecting us, were you, Finn?
Lucas asked.
You want to know?
The face said, revealing large, flat, yellow teeth.
I was on my way out to find something to eat.
He looked to Bobby as though he could survive on a diet of moldering carpet, or burrow patiently through the brown wood pulp of the damp, swollen books stacked shoulder high on either side of the tunnel where they stood.
Who's the little shit, Lucas? You know, Finn,
Landing gear
Beauvoir and
deployed.
I are experiencing difficulties with something we acquired from you in good faith.
Lucas extended his cane and prodded delicately at a dangerous-looking overhang of crumbling paperbacks.
Are you now?
The Finn pursed his gray lips in mock concern.
Don't fuck with those first editions, Lucas. You bring 'em down, you pay for 'em.
Lucas withdrew the cane. Its polished ferrule flashed in the lantern glare.
So,
The Finn said,
you got problems.
funny thing, Lucas. Funny fucking thing.
His cheeks were grayish, seamed with deep diagonal creases.
Low gravity
I got
warning.
some problems too. 3 of
Handbrake is
them.
on.
I didn't have them this morning. I guess that's just the way life is sometimes.
He put the
Cargo
hissing
suit
lantern
deployed.
down on a gutted steel
Handbrake is
filing
on.
cabinet and fished a bent, unfiltered cigarette from a side pocket of something that might once have been a tweed jacket.
My 3 problems. They're upstairs. Maybe you want to have a look at them.
He struck a wooden match on the base of the lantern and lit his cigarette. The pungent reek of black Cuban tobacco gathered in the air between them.
You know,
The Finn
said,
stepping over the first bodies.
I've been at this location a long time. Everybody knows. They know I'm here. You buy from the Finn, you know who you're buying from. And I stand behind my product every time.
Bobby was staring down at the upturned face of the dead man, at the eyes gone dull. There was something wrong with the shape of the torso, wrong with the way it lay there in the black clothes. Japanese face, no expression, dead eyes.
And all that time,
The Finn continued.
you know how many people ever dumb enough to try to get in here to take me off? None. Not one. Not till this morning. And I get fucking 3 already. Wow.
He shot Bobby a hostile glance.
That's not counting the odd little lump of shit, I guess, but...
He shrugged.
He looks kind of lopsided.
Bobby said, still staring at the first corpse.
That's 'cause he's dog food inside.
The Finn leered.
All mashed up.
The Finn collects exotic weapons, Lucas said, nudging the wrist of a second body with the tip of his cane. Have you scanned them for implants, Finn?
Yeah, pain in the butt. Had to carry him downstairs to the back room. Nothing other than what you'd expect. They're just a hit team.
He sucked his teeth noisily.
Why does anybody want to hit me?
Maybe you sold them a very expensive product that wouldn't do its job. Lucas volunteered.
I hope you aren't saying you sent them, Lucas.
The Finn said levelly.
Unless you want to see me do the dog food trick.
Did I say you'd sold us something that doesn't work?
Experiencing difficulties, you said. And what else have you guys bought from me recently?
Sorry, Finn, but they're not ours. You know it, too.
Yeah, I guess I do. So what the fuck's got you down here, Lucas? You know that stuff you bought wasn't covered by the usual guarantees.
Handbrake is on.
You know,
Said the Finn, after listening to the story of Bobby's abortive cyberspace run.
that's some weird shit out there.
He slowly shook his narrow, strangely elongated head.
Didn't used to be this way.
He looked at Lucas.
You people know, don't you?
They were seated around a square white table in a white room on the ground floor, behind the junk-clogged storefront.
Handbrake is on.
The floor was scuffed hospital tile, molded in a non-slip pattern, and the walls broad slabs of dingy white plastic concealing dense layers of anti-bugging circuitry. Compared to the storefront, the white room seemed surgically clean. Several alloy tripods, bristling with sensors and scanning gear, stood around the table like abstract sculpture. "Know what?" Bobby asked. With each retelling of his story, he felt less like a Wilson. Important. It made him feel important.
Not you, pisshead.
The Finn said wearily.
Him. Big hoodoo man.
He knows.
Knows it's not the same. Hasn't been. Not for a long time. I've been in the trade forever. Way back. Before the war. Before
Cargo
there was
scoop
any
retracted.
Matrix. Or anyway, before people knew there was one.
He was looking at Bobby now.
I got a pair of shoes older than you are, so what the fuck should I expect you to know? There were cowboys ever since there were computers. They built the first computers to crack German ice, right? Code breakers. So there was ice before computers, you want to look at it that way.
He lit his 15th
Landing
cigarette
gear
of the evening,
retracted.
and smoke began to fill the white room.
Lucas knows, yeah. The last 7-8 years, there's been funny stuff out there. Out on the console cowboy circuit. The new jockeys, they make deals with things, don't they, Lucas? Yeah, you bet I know. They still need the hard and the soft. And they still gotta be faster than snakes on ice, but all of them, all the ones who really know how to cut it, they got allies. Don't they, Lucas?
Lucas took his gold toothpick out of his pocket and began to work on a rear molar, his face dark and serious.
Thrones and dominions.
The Finn said obscurely.
Yeah, there's things out there. Ghosts. Voices. Why not? Oceans had mermaids, all that shit. And we had a sea of silicon, see? Sure, it's just a tailored hallucination we all agreed to have. Cyberspace. But anybody who jacks in knows, fucking knows, it's a whole universe. And every year, it gets a little more crowded. Sounds like.
For us, Lucas said, the world has always worked that way.
Yeah,
The Finn said.
so you guys could slot right into it. Tell people the things you were cutting deals with were your same old bush gods.
Divine horsemen.
Sure. Maybe you believe it. But I'm old enough to remember when it wasn't like that. 10 years ago, you went in the Gentleman Loser and tried telling any of the top jocks you talked with ghosts in the Matrix. They'd have figured you were crazy.
A Wilson. Bobby put in, feeling left out and no
Landing gear
longer as
deployed.
important. The Finn looked at him blankly.
A what? Wilson, a fuck up? It's hot dogger talk, I guess. Did it again, shit.
The Finn gave him a very strange look.
Jesus. That's your word for it, huh? Christ, I know the guy.
Who?
Bodine Wilson, he said. First guy I ever knew wound up as a figure of speech.
Was he stupid? Bobby asked, immediately regretting it.
Stupid? Shit, no, he was smart as hell.
The Finn stubbed his cigarette out in a cracked ceramic Campari ashtray.
Just a total fuck-up was all.
Low gravity
Worked with
warning.
the Dixie Flatline once.
The bloodshot yellow eyes grew distant. Finn, Lucas said. Where did you get that icebreaker you sold us? The Finn regarded him bleakly.
40 years in the business, Lucas. You know how many times I've been asked that question. You know how many times I'd be dead if I'd answered it?
Lucas nodded. I take your point. But at the same time, I put one to you. He held the toothpick out toward the Finn like a toy dagger. The real reason you're willing to sit here and bullshit is that you think those three stiffs upstairs have something to do with the icebreaker you sold us. And you sat up and took special notice when Bobby told you about his mother's condo getting wiped, didn't you? The Finn showed teeth.
Maybe.
Somebody's got you on their list, Finn. Those three dead ninjas upstairs cost somebody a lot of money. When they don't come back, somebody'll be even more determined, Finn. The red-rimmed yellow eyes blinked.
They were all tooled up, he said, ready for a hit. But one of them had some other things for asking questions.
His nicotine-stained fingers, almost the color of cockroach wings, came up to slowly massage his short upper lip.
I got it off Wigan Ludgate, he said. The Wig.
Never heard of him, Lucas said.
Crazy little motherfucker,
the Finn said.
Used to be a cowboy.
How it was, the Finn began, and to Bobby it was all infinitely absorbing, even better than listening to Beauvoir and Lucas. Wigan Ludgate had had 5 years as a top jock, which is a decent run for a cyberspace cowboy. 5 years tends to find a cowboy either rich or brain dead, or else financing a stable of younger cracksmen and strictly into the managerial side. The Wig, in his first heat of youth and glory, had stormed off on an extended pass through the rather sparsely occupied sectors of the Matrix, representing those geographical areas which had once been known as the Third World. Silicon doesn't wear out. Microchips were effectively immortal. The Wig took notice of the fact. Like every other child of his age, however, he knew that silicon became obsolete, which was worse than wearing out. This fact was a grim and accepted constant for the Wig, like death or taxes. And in fact, he was usually more worried about his gear falling behind the state-of-the-art than he was about death, he was 22, or taxes. He didn't file, although he paid a Singapore money laundry a yearly percentage that was roughly equivalent to the income tax he would have been required to pay if he'd declared his gross. The Wig reasoned that all that obsolete silicon had to be going somewhere. Where it was going, he learned, was into any number of very poor places, struggling along with nascent industrial bases. Nations so benighted that the concept of nation was still taken seriously. The Wig punched himself through a couple of African backwaters and felt like a shark cruising a swimming pool thick with caviar. Not that any one of those tasty tiny eggs amounted to much, but you could just open wide
Cargo
and
hold at
scoop,
maximum capacity.
and it was easy and filling, and it added up. The Wig worked the Africans for a week, incidentally bringing about the collapse of at least 3 governments and causing untold human suffering. At the end of his week, fat with the cream of several million laughably tiny bank accounts, he retired. As he was going out, the locusts were coming in. Other people had gotten the African idea. The Wig sat on the beach at Cannes for 2 years, ingesting only the most expensive designer drugs and, periodically, flicking on a tiny Hosaka television to study the bloated bodies of dead Africans with a strange and curiously innocent intensity. At some point, no one could quite say where or when or why, it began to be noted that the wig had gone over the edge. Specifically, the Finn said, the wig had become convinced that God
Cargo
lived
scoop
in cyberspace.
retracted.
Or perhaps that cyberspace was God, or some new manifestation of same. The wig's ventures into theology tended to be marked by major paradigm shifts, true leaps of faith. The Finn had some idea of what the wig was about in those days, shortly after his conversion to his new and singular faith. Wigan Ludgate had returned to the sprawl and embarked on an epic, if somewhat random voyage of cybernetic discovery. Being a former console jockey, he knew where to go for the very best in what the Finn called the hard and the soft. The Finn provided the wig with all manner of both, as the wig was still a rich man. The wig explained to the Finn that his technique of mystical exploration involved projecting his consciousness into blank, unstructured sectors of the Matrix and waiting. To the man's credit, the Finn said he never actually claimed to have met God, although he did maintain that he had on several occasions sensed his presence moving upon the face of the grid. In due course, the wig ran out of money. His spiritual quest having alienated the few remaining business connections from his pre-African days, he sank without a trace.
But then he turned up one day,
The Finn said.
crazy as a shithouse rat. He was a pale little fucker anyway, but now he wore all this African shit, beads and bones and everything.
Bobby let go of the Finn's narrative long enough to wonder how anyone who looked like the Finn could describe somebody as a pale little fucker. Then glanced over at Lucas, whose face was dead grim. Then it occurred to Bobby that Lucas might take the Africa stuff personally, sort of. But the Finn was continuing his story.
He had a lot of stuff he wanted to sell. Decks, peripherals, software. It was all a couple of years old, but it was top gear. So I gave him a price on it. I noticed he'd had a socket implant, and he kept this one sliver of Microsoft jacked behind his ear. "What's the soft?" "It's blank," he says. He's sitting right where you are now, kid, and he says to me, "It's blank, and it's the voice of God. And I live forever in his white hum," or some shit like that. So I think, Christ, the wig's gone, but good now. And there he is, counting up the money I'd given him for about the 5th time. "Wig," I said, "time's money, but tell me what you intend to do now." Because I was curious. Known the guy years in a business way. "Finn," he says, "I gotta get up the gravity well. God's up there." I mean, he says, he's everywhere, but there's too much static down here. It obscures his face. "Right," I say, "you got it." So I show him the door, and that's it. Never saw him again.
Bobby blinked, waited, squirmed a little on the hard seat of the folding chair.
Except, about a year later, a guy turns up. High orbit rigger down the well on a leave. And he's got some good software for sale. Not great, but interesting. He says it's from the wig. Well, maybe the wig's a freak and long out of the game, but he can still spot the good shit. So I buy it. That was maybe 10 years ago, right? And every year or so, some guy would turn up with something. The wig told me I should offer you this, and usually I'd buy it. It was never anything special, but it was okay.
Never the same guy bringing it either.
Was that it, Finn? Just software? Lucas asked.
Yeah, mainly. Except for these weird sculpture things. I'd forgotten that. I figured the wig made him. First time a guy came in with one of those, I bought the ware he had, then said, "What the fuck do you call that?" Wig said you might be interested, the guy said. "Tell him he's crazy," I said. The guy laughed. "Well, you keep it," he says. "I'm not carrying the goddamn thing back up with me." I mean, it was about the size of a deck, this thing. Just a bunch of garbage and shit, stuck together in a box. So I pushed it behind this coke crate full of scrap iron and forgot it. Except old Smith, he's a colleague of mine in those days, dealt mostly art and collectibles. He sees it and wants it. So we do some dipshit deal. "Any more of these, Finn," he says, "get 'em. There's assholes uptown go for this kind of shit." So the next time a guy turned up from the wig, I bought the sculpture thing too and traded it to Smith. But it was never much money for any of it. The Finn shrugged. "Not until last month, anyway. Some kid came in with what you bought. It was from the wig. Listen," he says, "this is Biosoft and it's a breaker. Wig says it's worth a lot. I put a scan on it, and it looked right. I thought it looked interesting, you know. Your partner Beauvoir thought it looked pretty interesting too. I bought it. Beauvoir bought it off me. End of story."
The Finn dragged out a cigarette. This one, broken, bent double.
"Shit,"
he said. He pulled a faded pack of cigarette papers from the same pocket and extracted one of the fragile pink leaves, rolling it tightly around the broken cigarette, a sort of splint. When he licked the glue, Bobby caught a glimpse of a very pointed gray-pink tongue.
"And where, Finn, does Mr. Wig reside?"
Lucas asked, his thumbs beneath his chin, his large fingers forming a steeple in front of his face.
"Lucas, I haven't got the slightest fucking clue. In orbit somewhere. And modestly, if the kind of money he was getting out of me meant anything to him. You know, I hear there's places up there where you don't need money if you fit into the economy, so maybe a little goes a long way. Don't ask me, though, I'm agoraphobic."
He smiled nastily at Bobby, who was trying to get the image of that tongue out of his mind.
"You know,"
he said, squinting at Lucas,
"it was about that time that I started hearing about weird shit happening in the Matrix."
"Like what?" Bobby asked.
"Keep the fuck out of this,"
the Finn said, still looking at Lucas.
"That was before you guys turned up. The new Hoodoo team. I knew this street samurai got a job working for a special forces type, made the wig look flat fucking normal. Her and this cowboy, they'd scraped up out of Chiba. They were onto something like that. Maybe they found it. Istanbul was the last I saw of them. Heard she lived in London once, a few years ago. Who the fuck knows? 7, 8 years.
The Finn suddenly seemed tired and old. Very old. He looked to Bobby like a big, mummified rat, animated by springs and hidden wires. He took a wristwatch with a cracked face and a single greasy leather strap from his pocket and consulted it.
Jesus. Well, that's all you get from me, Lucas. I've got some friends from an organ bank coming by in 20 minutes to talk a little biz.
Bobby thought of the bodies upstairs. They'd been there all day.
Hey,
the Finn said, reading the expression on his face.
Organ banks are great for getting rid of things. I'm paying them. Those motherless assholes upstairs.
They don't have too much left in the way of organs.
And the Finn laughed.
You said he was close to Legba. And Legba's the one you and Beauvoir said gave me luck when I hit that black ice?
Beyond the honeycomb edge of the geodesics, the sky was lightening. Yes, Lucas said. He seemed lost in thought.
But he doesn't seem to trust that stuff at all.
It doesn't matter, Lucas said as the rolls came into view. He's always been close to the spirit of the thing.
Audible Frontiers presents Count Zero, written by William Gibson and narrated by Jonathan Davis.
Count Zero interrupt. On receiving an interrupt, decrement the counter to 0. Chapter 17. The Squirrel Wood. The plane had gone to ground near the sound of running water. Turner could hear it, turning in the G-web in his fever asleep. Water Down Stone, one of the oldest songs. The plane was smart as any dog, with hardwired instincts of concealment. He felt it sway on its landing gear somewhere in the sick night and creep forward, branches brushing and scraping against the dark canopy. The plane crept into deep green shadow and sank down on its knees, its airframe whining and creaking as it flattened itself, belly down into loam and granite like a manta ray into sand. The mimetic polycarbon coating its wings and fuselage, mottled and darkened, taking on the colors and patterns of moon-dappled stone and forest soil. Finally, it was silent, and the only sound was the sound of water over a creek bed. He came awake like a machine, eyes opening, vision plugged in, empty, remembering the red flash of Lynch's death out beyond the fixed sights of the Smith & Wesson. The arc of the canopy above him was laced with mimetic approximations of leaves and branches. Pale dawn and the sound of running water. He was still wearing Oki's blue work shirt. It smelled of sour sweat now, and he'd ripped the sleeves out the day before. The gun lay between his legs, pointing at the jet's black joystick. The G-web was a limp tangle around his hips and shoulders. He twisted around and saw the girl. Oval face and a brown, dried trickle of blood beneath a nostril. She was still out, sweating, her lips slightly parted, like a doll's.
Where are we?
We are 15 meters south-southeast of the landing coordinates you provided. The plane said. You were unconscious again. I opted for concealment. He reached back and removed the interface plug from his socket, breaking his link with the plane. He gazed dully around the cockpit until he found the manual controls for the canopy. It sighed up on servos, the lacework of polycarbon leaves shifting as it moved. He got his leg over the side, looked down at his hand flat against the fuselage at the edge of the cockpit. Polycarbon reproduced the gray tones of a nearby boulder. As he watched, it began to paint a hand-sized patch the color of his palm. He pulled his other leg over, the gun forgotten on the seat. and slid down into earth and long, sweet grass. Then he slept again, his forehead against the grass, and dreamed of
Cargo
running water.
scoop deployed.
When he woke, he was crawling forward on his hands and knees, through low branches heavy with dew. Finally, he reached a clearing and pitched forward, rolling over, his arms spread in what felt like surrender. High above him, something small and gray launched itself from one branch, caught another, swung there for an instant, then scrambled away out of his sight. Lie still, he heard a voice telling him, years away. Just lay out and relax, and pretty soon they'll forget you. Forget you in the gray and the dawn and the dew. They're out to feed and play,
Cargo
and their
hold
brains
at
can't
maximum
hold
capacity.
2 messages. Not for long. He lay there on his back, beside his brother, the nylon-stocked Winchester across his chest, breathing the smell of new brass and gun oil, the smell of their campfire still in his hair. And his brother was always right about the squirrels. They came. They forgot the clear glyph of death spelled out below them in patched denim and blue steel. They came, racing along limbs, pausing to sniff the morning, and Turner's .22 cracked, a limp gray body tumbling down. The others scattered, vanishing, and Turner passed the gun to his brother. Again they waited for the squirrels to forget them.
Cargo scoop retracted.
You're like me, Turner said to the squirrels, bobbing up out of his dream. One of them sat up suddenly on a fat limb and looked directly at him. I always come back. The squirrel hopped away. I was coming back when I ran from the Dutchman. I was coming back when I flew to Mexico. I was coming back when I killed Lynch.
Low gravity warning.
He lay there for a long time, watching the squirrels, while the woods woke and the morning
Cargo
warmed
scoop
around him.
deployed.
A crow swept in, banking, breaking with feathers, it spread like black mechanical fingers, checking to see if he were dead. Turner grinned up at the crow as it flapped away. Not yet. He crawled back in under the overhanging branches and found her sitting up in the cockpit. She wore a baggy white t-shirt slashed diagonally with the Mas Neotech logo. There were lozenges of fresh red blood across the front of the shirt. Her nose was bleeding again. Bright blue eyes, dazed and disoriented, and sockets bruised yellow-black like exotic makeup. Young, he saw. Very young. You're Mitchell's daughter, he said, dragging the name up from the Biosoft dossier. Angela. Angie, she said automatically. Who are you? I'm bleeding. She held out a bloody carnation of wadded tissue. Turner, I was expecting your father. Remembering the gun now, her other hand out of sight, below the edge of the cockpit. Do you know where he is? In the mesa. He thought he could talk with them, explain it. Because they need him. With who? He took a step forward. Mas. The board. They can't afford to hurt him, can they? Why would they? Another step. She
Cargo
dabbed at her
hold
nose
at
with the red
maximum
tissue.
Capacity.
Because he sent me out. Because he knew they were going to hurt me. Kill me, maybe. Because of the dreams. The dreams? Do you think they'll hurt him? No, they wouldn't do that. I'm going to climb up there now. Okay? She nodded. He had to run his hands over the side of the fuselage to find the shallow, recessed handholds. The mimetic coating showed him leaf and lichen, twigs. And then he was up beside her, and he saw the gun beside her sneakered foot. But wasn't he coming himself? I was expecting him, your father.
Cargo scoop retracted.
We never planned that. We only had the one plane, didn't he tell you? She started to shake. Didn't he tell you anything? Enough, he said, putting his hand on her shoulder. He told us enough. It'll be all right. He swung his legs over, bent, moved the Smith & Wesson away from her foot, and found the interface cable. His hand still on her,
Low gravity
he
warning.
raised it, snapped it into place behind his ear. Give me the procedures for erasing anything you stored in the past 48 hours, he said. I want to dump that course for Mexico City. Your flight from the coast, anything. There was no plan logged for Mexico City. The voice said,
Cargo scoop
direct
deployed.
neural input on audio. Turner stared at the girl, rubbed his jaw. Where were we going? Bogota. And the jet reeled out coordinates for the landing they hadn't made. She blinked at him, her lids bruised dark as the surrounding skin. Who are you talking to? The plane. Did Mitchell tell you where he thought you'd be going? Japan. Know anyone in Bogota? Where's your mother? No. Berlin, I think. I don't really know her. He wiped the plane's banks, dumping Conroy's programming, what there was of it. The approach from California, identification data for the site, a flight plan that would have taken them to a strip within 300 kilometers of Bogota's urban core. Someone would find the jet eventually. He thought about the MAS orbital recon system and wondered if the stealth and evasion programs he'd ordered the plane to run had done any real good. He could offer the jet to Rudy for salvage, but he doubted Rudy would want to be involved. For that matter, simply showing up at the farm with Mitchell's daughter in tow dragged Rudy in right up to his neck. But there was nowhere else to go. Not for the things he needed now. It was a 4-hour walk, along half-remembered trails and down a weed-grown, winding stretch of 2-lane blacktop. The trees were different, it seemed to him. And then he remembered how much they would have grown over the years since he'd been back. At regular intervals, they passed the stumps of wooden poles that had once supported telephone wires, overgrown now with bramble and honeysuckle. The wires pulled down for fuel. Bees grazed in flowering grass at the roadside. Is there food where we're going? The girl asked, the soles of her white sneakers scuffing the weathered blacktop. Sure, Turner said. All you want. What I want right now is water. She swiped a lank strand of brown hair back from a tanned cheek. He'd noticed she was developing a limp, and she'd started to wince each time she put her right foot down. What's wrong with your leg? Ankle. Something I think when I decked the light. She grimaced, kept walking. We'll rest. No, I want to get there. Get anywhere. Rest, he said, taking her hand, leading her to the edge of the road. She made a face but sat down beside him. Her right leg stretched carefully in front of her. That's a big gun, she said. It was hot now, too hot for the parka. He'd put the shoulder rig on bareback, with the sleeveless work shirt over it, tails out and flapping. Why's the barrel look like that? Like a cobra's head underneath? That's a sighting device for night fights. He leaned forward to examine her ankle. It was swelling quickly now. I don't know how much longer you'll want to walk on that, he said. You get into a lot of fights at night? With guns? No. I don't think I understand what it is that you do. He looked up at her. I don't always understand that myself. Not lately. I was expecting your father. He wanted to change companies, work for somebody else. The people he wanted to work for hired me and some other people to make sure he got out of his old contract. But there wasn't any way out of that contract, she said. Not legally. That's right. Undoing the knot, unlacing the sneaker. Not legally. Oh. So that's what you do for a living? Yes. Sneaker off now. She wore no sock, the ankle swelling badly. This is a sprain. What about the other people then? You had more people back there in that ruin? Somebody was shooting and those flares. Hard to say who was shooting, he said. But the flares weren't ours. Maybe Moss security team following you out. Did you think you got out clean? I did what Chris told me, she said. Chris, that's my father. I know. I think I'm going to have to carry you the rest of the way. But what about your friends? What friends? Back there in Arizona. Right. Well. And he wiped sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. Can't say. Don't really know. Seeing the white-out sky, flare of energy brighter than the sun, but no pulse of electromagnetics, the plane had said. The first of Rudy's augmented dogs picked them up 15 minutes after they started out again.
Cargo hold
Angie riding
at
Turner's
maximum
back,
capacity.
arms around his shoulders, skinny thighs under his armpits, his fingers locked in front of his sternum in a double fist. She smelled like a kid from the upline burbs, some vaguely herbal hint of soap or shampoo. Thinking that, he thought about what he must smell like to her. Rudy had a shower. Oh shit, what's that? Stiffening on his back, pointing. A lean gray hound regarded them from a high clay bank at a turning in the road. Its narrow head sheathed and blindered in a black hood, studded with sensors. It panted, tongue lolling, and slowly swung its head from side to side. It's okay, Turner said. Watchdog. Belongs to my friend. The house had grown, sprouting wings and workshops, but Rudy had never painted the peeling clapboard of the original structure. Rudy had thrown up a taut square of chain link since Turner's time, fencing away his collection of vehicles, but the gate was open when they arrived,
Cargo sleeve
the hinges lost
retracted.
in morning glory and rust. The real defenses, Turner knew, were elsewhere. 4 of the augmented hounds trotted after him as he trudged up the gravel drive. Angie's head limp on his shoulder, her arms still locked around him. Rudy was waiting on the front porch in old white shorts and a navy t-shirt, its single pocket displaying at least 9 pens of one kind or another. He looked at them and raised a green can of
Low
Dutch
gravity
beer in
warning.
greeting. Behind him, a blonde in a faded khaki shirt stepped out of the kitchen, a chrome spatula in her hand. Her hair was clipped short, swept up and back in a cut that made Turner think of the Korean medic in Hosaka's pod, of the pod burning,
of Weber, of the white sky. He swayed there, in Rudy's gravel driveway, legs wide to support the girl, his bare chest streaked with sweat, with dust from the mall in Arizona, and looked at Rudy and the blonde. "We got some breakfast for you," Rudy said. "When you came up on the dog screens, we figured you'd be hungry." His tone was carefully noncommittal. The girl groaned. "That's good," Turner said. "She's got a bum ankle, Rudy. We better look at that. Some other things I have to talk to you about, too." "Little young for you, I'd say," Rudy said and took another swig of his beer. "Fuck off, Rudy,"
Handbrake is on.
the woman beside him said. "Can't you see she's hurt? Bring her in this way," she said to Turner, and was gone back through the kitchen door. "You look different," Rudy said, peering at him, and Turner saw that he was drunk. "The same, but different." "It's been a while," Turner said, starting for the wooden steps. "You get a face job or something?" "Reconstruction. They had to build it back from records." He climbed the steps, his lower back stabbed through with pain at every move. "It's not bad," Rudy said. "I almost didn't notice." He belched. He was shorter than Turner and going to fat, but they had the same brown hair, very similar features. Turner paused on the stair when their eyes were level. "You still do a little bit of everything, Rudy? I need this kid scanned. I need a few other things, too." "Well," his brother said, "we'll see what we can do. We heard something last night. Maybe a sonic boom. Anything to do with you?" "Yeah. There's a jet up by the squirrel wood, but it's pretty well out of sight." Rudy sighed. "Jesus. Well, bring her in." Rudy's years in the house had stripped it of most of the things that Turner might have remembered, and something in him was obscurely grateful for that. He watched the blonde crack eggs into a steel bowl, dark yellow free-range yolks. Rudy kept his own chickens. "I'm Sally," she said, whisking the eggs around with a fork. "Turner." "That's all he ever calls you either," she said. "He never has talked about you much." "We haven't kept all that much in touch. Maybe I should go up now and help him." "You sit. Your little girl's okay with Rudy. He's got a good touch." "Even when he's pissed?" "Half pissed. Well, he's not going to operate just to derm her and tape that ankle." She crushed dry tortilla chips into a black pan over sizzling butter and poured the eggs on top. "What happened to your eyes, Turner? You and her?" She stirred the mixture with the chrome spatula, slopping in salsa from a plastic tub. G-force had to take off quick. "That how she hurt her ankle?" "Maybe, don't know." "People after you now? After her?" Busy taking plates from the cabinet above the sink, the cheap brown laminate of the cabinet doors triggering a sudden rush of nostalgia in Turner, seeing her tanned wrists as his mother's. "Probably," he said. "I don't know what's involved, not yet." "Eat some of this." Transferring the mixture to a white plate, rummaging for a fork. "Rudy's scared of the kind of people you might get after you." Taking the plate, the fork, steam rising from the eggs. "So am I." "Got some clothes," Sally said over the sound of the shower. Friend of Rudy's left him here. Ought to fit you. The shower was gravity operated. Rainwater from a roof tank. A fat white filtration unit strapped into the pipe above the spray head. Turner stuck his head out between the cloudy sheets of plastic and blinked at her. Thanks. Girl's unconscious, she said. Rudy thinks it's shock, exhaustion. He says her crits are high, so he might as well run his scan now. She left the room then, taking Turner's fatigues and Oki's shirt with her.
What is she?
Rudy, extending a crumpled scroll of silvery printout. I don't know how to read that. Turner said, looking around the white room looking for Angie. Where is she?
Sleeping. Sally's watching her.
Rudy turned and walked back, the length of the room, and Turner remembered it had been the living room once. Rudy began to shut his consoles down, the tiny pilot lights blinking out one by one.
I don't know, man. I just don't know.
What is it, some kind of cancer? Turner followed him down the room, past a work table, where a micromanipulator waited beneath its dust cover. Past the dusty rectangular eyes of a bank of aged monitors, one of them with a shattered screen.
It's all through her head,
Rudy said.
like long chains of it. It doesn't look like anything I've ever seen, ever. Nothing.
How much do you know about biochips, Rudy? Rudy grunted. He seemed very sober now, but tense, agitated. He kept running his hands back through his hair.
That's what I thought. It's some kind of... not an implant. Graft.
What's it for?
For? Christ, who the fuck knows? Who did it to her? Somebody you work for?
Her father, I think.
Jesus.
Rudy wiped his hand across his mouth.
It shadows like tumor on the scans, but her crits are high enough. Normal. What's she like ordinarily?
Don't know. A kid? He shrugged.
Fucking hell, Rudy said. I'm amazed she can walk.
He opened a little lab freezer and came out with a frosted bottle of Moskovskaya.
Want it out of the bottle?
He asked. Maybe later. Rudy sighed, looked at the bottle, then returned it to the fridge.
So what do you want? Anything as weird as what's in that little girl's head. Somebody's going to be after it soon. If they aren't already.
They are, Turner said. I don't know if they know she's here.
Yet.
Rudy wiped his palms on his grubby white shorts.
But they probably will, right?
Turner nodded.
Where are you going to go then?
The Sprawl.
Why?
Because I've got money there. I've got credit lines in 4 different names, no way to link them back to me. Because I've got a lot of other connections I may be able to use. And because it's always cover, the Sprawl. So damned much of it, you know?
Okay,
Rudy said.
When?
You that worried about it? You want us right out?
No, I mean, I don't know. It's all pretty interesting, what's in your girlfriend's head. I've got a friend in Atlanta. Could rent me a function analyzer, brain map, 1-to-1. Put that on her, I might start to figure out what that thing is. Might be worth something.
Sure. If you knew where to sell it.
Aren't you curious? I mean, what the hell is she? You pull her out of some military lab? Rudy opened the white freezer door again, took out the bottle of vodka, opened it, and took a swallow. Turner took the bottle and tilted it, letting the icy fluid splash against his teeth. He swallowed, shuddered. It's corporate. Big. I was supposed to get her father out, but he sent her instead. Then somebody took the whole side out. Looked like a baby nuke. We just made it this far. He handed Rudy the bottle. Stay straight from you, Rudy. You get scared. You drink too much. Rudy was staring at him, ignoring the bottle. Arizona, he said. It was on the news. Mexico's still kicking about it, but it wasn't a nuke. They've had crews out there all over it, no nuke. What was it? They think it was a railgun. They think somebody put up a hypervelocity gun in a cargo blimp and blew hell out of some derelict mall out there in the boonies. They know there was a blimp near there, and so far nobody's found it. You can rig a railgun to blow itself to plasma when it discharges. The projectile could have been damn near anything at those velocities. About 150 kilos of ice would do the trick. He took the bottle, capped it, and put it down on the counter beside
Cargo
him.
scoop retracted.
All that land around there, it belongs to Moss. Moss Biolabs, doesn't it? They've been on the news, Moss. Cooperating fully with various authorities. You bet. So that tells us where you got your little honey from, I guess. Sure. But it doesn't tell me who used the railgun. Or why. Rudy shrugged. You'd better come see this, Sally said from the door. Much later, Turner sat with Sally on the front porch. The girl had lapsed finally into something Rudy's EEG called sleep. Rudy was back in one of his workshops, probably with his bottle of vodka. There were fireflies around the honeysuckle vines beside the chain-link gate. Turner found that if he half closed his eyes, from a seat on the wooden porch swing, he could almost see an apple tree that was no longer there. The tree that had once supported a length of silvery gray hemp rope and an ancient automobile tire. There were fireflies then as well, and Rudy's heels thumping a bare, hard skid of earth as he pumped himself out on the swing's arc, legs kicking, and Turner lay on his back in the grass watching the stars. Tongues, Sally said, Rudy's woman from the creaking rattan chair. Her cigarette a red eye in the dark. Talking in the tongues. What's that? What your kid was doing upstairs. You know any French? No, not much. Not without a lexicon. Some of it sounded French to me. The red amber was a short slash for an instant when she tapped ash. When I was little, my old man took me one time to the stadium, and I saw the testifying and the speaking in tongues. It scared me. I think it scared me more today when she started. Rudy taped the end of it, didn't he? Yeah. You know, Rudy hasn't been doing too good. That's mainly why I moved back in here. I told him I wasn't staying unless he straightened himself out. But then it got real bad, so about 2 weeks ago I moved back in. I was about ready to go when you showed up. The coal of the cigarette arced out over the railing and fell on the gravel that covered the yard. Drinking? That and the stuff he cooks for himself in the lab. You know that man knows a little bit of damn near everything. He's still got a lot of friends around the county.
I've heard him tell stories about when you and him were kids, before you left.
He should have left too, he said.
He hates the city, she said. Says it all comes in online anyway. So why do you need to go there?
I went because there was nothing happening here. Rudy could always find something to do. Still can by the look of it.
You should have stayed in touch. He wanted you here when your mother was dying.
I was in Berlin, couldn't leave what I was doing.
I guess not. I wasn't here then either. I came later. That was a good summer. Rudy just pulled me out of this sleaze-ass club in Memphis. Came in there with a bunch of country boys one night, and next day I was back here. Didn't really know why. Except he was nice to me those days. And funny. And he gave my head a chance to slow down. He taught me to cook. She laughed. I liked that. Except I was scared of those goddamn chickens out back.
She stood up then and stretched, the old chair creaking, and he was aware of the length of her tanned legs, the smell and summer heat of her close to his face. She put her hands on his shoulders. His eyes were level with the band of brown belly where her shorts rode low. Her navel a soft shadow, and remembering Allison in the white hollow room, he wanted to press his face there, taste it all. He thought she swayed slightly, but he wasn't sure.
Turner, she said. Sometimes being here with him, it's like being here alone.
So he stood. Rattle of the old swing chain where the eye bolts were screwed deep in the tongue and groove of the porch roof. Bolts his father might have turned 40 years before. And kissed her mouth as it opened. Cut loose in time by talk, and the fireflies, and the subliminal triggers of memory. So that it seemed to him, as he ran his palms up the warmth of her bare back beneath the white t-shirt, that the people in his life weren't beads strung on a wire of sequins, but clustered like quanta. So that he knew her as well as he'd known Rudy, or Allison, or Conroy. As well as he knew the girl who was Mitchell's daughter.
Hey,
she whispered, working her mouth free.
You come upstairs now.
Chapter 18.